The Alpha King's rejected bride, when she chose her enemy over her husband. They said she was weak, a fragile human handed over like cattle to a monster wearing a crown, but when Lydia Hale stood between two warring Alpha Kings on that blood-soaked battlefield, everyone who'd laughed at her fell silent. This is the story of how a woman they called powerless destroyed an empire built on fear, and how forbidden love became the most dangerous weapon of all. Stay until the end to see how she rewrote her fate. Drop a comment with your city and hit that like button right now. The carriage wheels grinding over frozen ground sounded like bones breaking. Lydia pressed her palms against the velvet seat, feeling the cold seep through her wedding dress. Layers of white silk that might as well have been a burial shroud. Her mother had cried when they'd laced her into it that morning. Not tears of joy, tears of relief that the family debt would finally be paid. "You'll be fine," her father had said, not meeting her eyes. Lord Vorn is powerful, respected. What he hadn't said, feared. What he hadn't said, not entirely human. The forest pressed close on both sides now, trees like black claws scraping at the winter sky. Lydia had never been this far north, never been anywhere really. 22 years spent in her father's crumbling estate, watching creditors circle like vultures, watching her three brothers drink away what little remained. And then the offer had come. Marriage. Immediate. To a lord she'd never met. Her father had signed the contract before sunset. "Miss Hale?" The driver's voice cracked through the small window. "We're approaching the gates." Lydia leaned forward, breath fogging the glass. Through the skeletal trees, she could see them, massive iron gates at least 20 feet high, worked into shapes that made her stomach turn. Wolves. Dozens of them, mouths open, frozen mid-snarl. The gates swung inward without a sound. Beyond them, the road changed. The frozen dirt gave way to smooth black stone that seemed to absorb the dying light. The trees here were different too, twisted, ancient things with bark that looked almost scaled. And everywhere, absolute silence. No birds, no wind, nothing. The estate emerged from the gloom like something out of a fever dream. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress. Gray stone walls rose 4 stories high, punctuated by narrow windows that looked more like arrow slits than anything meant for sunlight. Towers jutted from the corners, sharp and brutal. And over the main entrance, carved into the stone itself, a wolf's head the size of a wagon. The carriage stopped. Lydia's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought she might be sick. Her fingers found the door handle, slick with sweat despite the cold. "You getting out? Or are you going to sit there till spring?" She jerked back. A man stood beside the carriage door, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that looked like it had been on the wrong end of too many fights. Scar tissue ran from his left temple down to his jaw. His eyes were an unsettling amber color. Yes, I'm getting out." Lydia pushed the door open before he could touch it. The cold hit her like a slap. She stepped down onto stones so black they seemed to drink in what little light remained. The man watched her with an expression somewhere between amusement and pity. "Name's Garrett," he said, "head of household security. You'll see a lot of me. I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are." He turned toward the entrance. "Come on. Lord Vorn's waiting." Lydia's legs felt like water, but she forced them to move. The massive doors opened before Garrett could reach them, 2 servants in dark gray uniforms pulling them inward with synchronized precision. Neither looked at her. The entrance hall was vast and cold. Black marble floors stretched toward a staircase wide enough to drive the carriage up. Torches burned in iron sconces along the walls, but they gave off more shadow than light. And the smell, earth and something else. Something wild. "This way." Garrett didn't wait to see if she followed. They moved down a corridor lined with portraits. Lydia tried not to look at them, but it was impossible. Men with hard faces and harder eyes, women who looked like they'd been carved from ice, and in every single painting, somewhere in the background, wolves. Garrett stopped in front of a set of double doors, dark wood bound with iron. "He's inside. Knock before you enter. Don't touch anything unless he tells you to. And whatever you do..." He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something like concern there. "Don't lie to him. He always knows." Before Lydia could ask what the hell that meant, Garrett walked away, his footsteps echoing down the corridor until she was alone. She raised her hand to knock, hesitated. Behind that door was the man she'd married by proxy 3 days ago. A marriage conducted by lawyers and contracts, her signature on documents she'd barely read because what choice did she have? Her father's debts were crushing, her family was drowning, and Darius Vorn had offered salvation with one condition. Her. Lydia knocked. Enter? The voice was deep, controlled, absolutely devoid of warmth. She pushed the door open. The room beyond was a study. Massive desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, another fireplace with flames that burned an odd blue-white color. And standing in front of the fire, hands clasped behind his back, was Darius Vorn. He was tall. That was Lydia's first coherent thought. Easily 6.5 feet, broad through the shoulders, dressed entirely in black. Dark hair pulled back from a face that was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile years ago. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Silver, not gray, silver. And they were looking at her like she was something he'd ordered and was now inspecting for defects. Close the door. Lydia obeyed, her hand shaking so badly she nearly fumbled it. Darius turned fully to face her. You're smaller than I expected. I'm sorry? The words came out sharper than she'd intended. One dark eyebrow rose slightly. Your father's description led me to believe you'd be, larger, sturdier. Heat flooded Lydia's face, anger and humiliation in equal measure. I'm exactly as tall as I've always been. Perhaps your expectations were unrealistic. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Darius crossed the space between them with 4 long strides, stopping close enough that Lydia had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Up close, she could see the predatory stillness in the way he held himself. Like a wolf deciding whether something was prey or threat. Let's establish something right now, he said, his voice quiet and absolutely lethal. You are here because your father sold you to pay his debts. You signed a contract that gives me complete authority over your movements, your decisions, and your future. You live in my house, under my protection, by my rules. Do you understand? Lydia's nails bit into her palms. Yes. Yes what? She wanted to spit in his face. She wanted to run. She wanted to wake up back in her own bed and find this was all some horrible nightmare. Yes, my lord. Darius studied her for another long moment, then stepped back. Better. You'll have the east wing, 3rd floor. Your belongings will be brought up within the hour. He moved back toward the fire, dismissing her. Dinner is at 8. Don't be late. That's it? Lydia heard herself say. He glanced back, irritation flickering across his features. What else did you expect? Declarations of affection? This is a business arrangement, Miss Hale. Nothing more. It's Mrs. Vorn now, isn't it? The words tasted like ash, but she forced them out. Or does the business arrangement not extend to using your name? Something dangerous flashed in those silver eyes. Darius turned slowly, and Lydia felt every instinct screaming at her to back away, to apologize, to submit. She held her ground. You have fire, Darius said softly. That's unexpected. Also foolish, very foolish. He crossed back to her, and this time when he stopped, he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him despite the cold room. Let me make something clear, wife. You may share my name, but you will never share my confidence. You will never know my secrets, and you will certainly never challenge me in my own house. Are we understood? Lydia's throat felt tight, but she managed to nod. Good. Now get out. She turned toward the door, pride and anger warring with the primal fear that said she'd just made a terrible mistake. Her hand was on the handle when Darius spoke again. Lydia. She froze. It was the first time he'd used her given name. Welcome to Vorn Hall. I suspect you'll find it educational. So, the east wing was a maze of corridors and locked doors. The servant who'd escorted Lydia there, a thin woman named Clara, with gray streaks in her dark hair, had barely spoken beyond the necessary directions. Left here. Up these stairs. Watch your step. The room they'd given her was large but stark. A 4-poster bed with heavy curtains. A wardrobe that could have fit her entire childhood bedroom inside it. A writing desk positioned under a window that looked out over the forest. And everywhere, that same oppressive cold. There's a fire laid, Clara said, gesturing to the hearth. I can light it if you'd like. Please. Clara moved with practiced efficiency, coaxing flames from the kindling in minutes. The warmth helped, but not much. Lydia stood in the center of the room, still wearing her ridiculous wedding dress, and tried to process what her life had become. Is there anything else you need, ma'am? Lydia almost laughed. Anything else? She needed her freedom. She needed to understand what the hell she'd gotten into. She needed... Who else lives here? She asked instead. Clara's hand stilled on the poker. Ma'am? In the house, besides Lord Vaughan and the servants, who else? The Lord keeps his own counsel, ma'am. We don't see many visitors. But surely there are others. Family? Friends? Clara set the poker down carefully, her face unreadable. Lord Vaughan values his privacy. It's not my place to discuss his affairs. I'm his wife. Yes, ma'am. Clara moved toward the door. Dinner is at 8. Someone will come to escort you down. I'd suggest changing into something warmer. She left before Lydia could ask what that meant. Alone again, Lydia walked to the window. The sun was setting, turning the sky into shades of bruised purple and angry red. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction, dark and threatening. She pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the cold seep through. What had her father gotten her into? The question circled her mind like a trapped bird as she stood there watching darkness swallow the world outside. Somewhere in the house, floorboards creaked. Voices murmured too low to make out words, and beneath it all, a sound that might have been her imagination. Howling. It come. By the time someone knocked to escort her to dinner, Lydia had changed into a simple dark blue dress from the trunk that had appeared in her room. Her hand still shook as she tried to pin her hair up, eventually giving up and leaving it loose around her shoulders. The servant at the door was young, maybe 17, with nervous eyes. This way, ma'am. They descended through the house, passing fewer torches now that full dark had fallen. The shadows seemed alive, shifting in ways that made Lydia's skin crawl. Twice she thought she saw movement in the peripheral of her vision, but when she turned, there was nothing there. The dining room was on the ground floor, another cavernous space dominated by a table that could have seated 30. Darius sat at the head, still dressed in black, reading something by candlelight. He didn't look up when Lydia entered. She stood uncertainly by the door until he gestured to the chair on his right. Sit. Lydia crossed the room and took the indicated seat, uncomfortably aware of how far she was from the nearest exit. Servants materialized from the shadows, placing dishes in front of them, some kind of roasted meat, vegetables that smelled of rosemary, bread still steaming from the oven. Darius set aside his papers and picked up his wine glass, studying her over the rim. You changed. The dress wasn't practical for dinner. Practical. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. How refreshingly honest. Most women in your position would claim something about wanting to look nice. Most women in my position wouldn't have been sold off to pay gambling debts. The words were out before Lydia could stop them. She froze, waiting for the explosion. Instead, Darius laughed, a short, harsh sound completely devoid of humor. No, they wouldn't. He took a long drink, then set the glass down with deliberate care. Tell me, Lydia, what did your father tell you about me? That you were a lord, that you were wealthy, that this marriage would save the family. And you believed him? I didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices. Darius cut into his meat with precise movements. You could have refused. Run away. Thrown yourself on the mercy of some distant relative. And watch my mother and sister starve? Watch our home seized by creditors? So you sacrificed yourself instead. How noble. The sarcasm was thick enough to choke on. And now here you are, in a house full of strangers, married to a man you've never met, with no idea what you've actually agreed to. Lydia's appetite vanished. What do you mean? Darius leaned back in his chair, those silver eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Your father didn't tell you everything. He couldn't have. 'Cause if he had, you never would have come. Tell me what? Eat your dinner, Lydia. Tell me what? The command in her voice surprised even her. Darius's expression shifted. Not quite anger, but something close. Something dangerous. You want the truth? He stood slowly, and Lydia felt her heart rate spike. Fine. You want to know what kind of man your father sold you to? He moved around the table toward her, and every instinct screamed at Lydia to run. But she forced herself to stay seated, forced herself to meet his eyes. Darius stopped directly in front of her chair. I am not a lord, Lydia. I am a king. I rule territories your maps don't show, command armies your governments pretend don't exist, and enforce laws older than your country. He leaned down, hands bracing on the armrests of her chair, caging her in. And I am not entirely human. The room seemed to tilt. Lydia's voice came out as barely a whisper. What are you? Darius's smile was all teeth. Figure it out. Then he straightened and walked away, leaving his dinner half-eaten and Lydia trembling in her chair. She didn't sleep that night. How could she? Darius's words played on endless repeat in her mind. Not entirely human. The wolves carved into the gates, the howling she'd heard, or imagined, the way everyone moved through the house with that careful, predatory grace. Lydia paced her room until her feet ached, then stood at the window watching the forest. Moonlight turned everything silver and black, and she could have sworn she saw shapes moving between the trees. Large shapes, four-legged, impossible. But then, everything about this place was impossible. Around 3 a.m, she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy, measured. They stopped in front of her door. Lydia held her breath. A long silence. Then the footsteps moved on, fading into the distance. She slid down the wall and sat on the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. What had she done? What had her father condemned her to? Dawn came slowly, gray light creeping across the sky like a bruise. Lydia forced herself to eat breakfast when Clara brought it, bread and cheese and tea that tasted faintly of mint. Her hand still shook. Ma'am, Clara hesitated in the doorway. Lord Vorn has asked that you join him in the library this morning, 10 o'clock. Did he say why? No, ma'am. Of course not. The library turned out to be in the south wing, a journey that took Lydia through parts of the house she hadn't seen yet. More portraits, more wolves, and everywhere that persistent cold that no number of fireplaces seemed able to touch. Darius was waiting when she arrived, standing in front of a window with his back to the door. He didn't turn when she entered. You didn't sleep. It wasn't a question. Lydia closed the door behind her, irritation pushing past fear. How would you know? I know everything that happens in this house. He finally turned, and the shadows under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much either. Sit. We need to talk. Lydia remained standing. About what? About the fact that you're apparently not human? About whatever the hell this place really is? About the rules. Darius crossed to a desk and picked up a sheet of paper. Rule 1. You do not leave the estate without my explicit permission. Rule 2. You do not enter the West Wing under any circumstances. Rule 3. You do not ask questions about my business or my associates. Rule 4. This is insane, Lydia's voice rose. You can't just lock me up here like a prisoner. I'm not locking you up. I'm keeping you safe. From what? Darius's jaw tightened. From things you don't understand. Things that would kill you without a second thought if they knew you were here. Then let me go. Send me back to my family. No. The finality in that single word was like a door slamming shut. Lydia felt something break inside her, some last fragile hope that this could be reasoned with, that she could find a way out. Why? The question came out broken. Why do you even want me here if I'm such a burden? Darius was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. Because I made a promise to your father. And because, whether you believe it or not, you're safer here than anywhere else. I don't believe you. I don't particularly care. He set the paper down. You have free run of the estate grounds during daylight hours. The library, the gardens, the east wing, all accessible. But at night, you stay in your room, door locked, no matter what you hear. What am I going to hear? Darius moved toward the door, done with the conversation. Hopefully nothing, but if you do... He paused, his hand on the handle. Remember what I said. Stay in your room, lock the door, and don't, under any circumstances, open it until morning. He left before Lydia could respond, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded horribly final. Well, the days developed a pattern. Lydia woke late, ate breakfast alone, and spent her mornings exploring the parts of the estate she was allowed to access. The library became her refuge. Thousands of books in dozens of languages, everything from ancient histories to modern novels. She read voraciously, trying to drown her fears in other people's stories. Afternoons, she walked the grounds. The gardens were extensive despite the cold, winter-hardy plants arranged in geometric patterns that would probably be beautiful in spring, but they were empty. No gardeners, no other people. Just Lydia and the ever-present sensation of being watched. Dinner with Darius was the worst part. He attended most nights, always distant, always controlled. They spoke rarely, and when they did, it was surface-level nonsense. The weather, the food, nothing real. And at night, Lydia locked herself in her room and tried not to listen to the sounds that echoed through the house after dark. It was on the 5th night that everything changed. Lydia woke to howling, close, impossibly close, like it was right outside her window. She sat up in bed, heart pounding, and stared at the curtains fluttering in a breeze she shouldn't have been feeling. The window was open. She knew she'd locked it. She locked everything now, obsessively, before bed. But there it was, open, cold air pouring into the room, along with moonlight and that horrible howling. Lydia forced herself out of bed, bare feet freezing on the stone floor. She crossed to the window, intending to slam it shut, and stopped. In the garden below, lit by the full moon, stood the largest wolf she'd ever seen, easily as big as a horse, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb light. Its eyes, silver. The wolf stared up at her, unmoving, those familiar silver eyes burning with an intelligence no animal should possess. Lydia's hands gripped the windowsill, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing, what it meant. The wolf tilted its head, almost like it was asking a question. Then it turned and loped away into the forest, disappearing between the trees in seconds. Lydia slammed the window shut and locked it with shaking hands. Then she locked it again, and again, as if 3 locks could somehow make her feel safer. She didn't sleep for the rest of the night. At breakfast, Darius looked even more exhausted than usual. There were scratches on his left hand that hadn't been there the day before. Lydia stared at them as Clara poured tea. "You're hurt." Darius glanced at his hand like he'd forgotten about it. "It's nothing. Disagreement with a door." "Doors don't usually fight back." "This one did." He picked up his cup, effectively ending the conversation, but Lydia couldn't let it go. Not anymore. "I saw something last night." Darius's hand stilled halfway to his mouth. "What did you see?" "A wolf, in the garden. It was—" She swallowed hard. "Huge, and its eyes—" "What color were its eyes, Lydia?" The question came out sharp, urgent. Clara had stopped moving, the teapot frozen mid-pour. "Silver," Lydia whispered. Darius set his cup down very carefully. "Did it approach the house?" "No, it just looked at me. Then it left." "Good." He stood abruptly. "Clara, have Garrett increase the perimeter guards. Double watches until further notice." "Yes, my lord." Clara practically ran from the room. Lydia stayed seated, watching Darius pace. "It was you, wasn't it? That wolf, it was you." He stopped pacing but didn't look at her. "Yes." "How?" "That's not a conversation we're having right now." "When then?" Lydia stood, anger overriding fear. "When are you going to stop treating me like a child and tell me the truth? I'm trapped in this house, surrounded by things I don't understand, married to a man who apparently turns into a wolf at night. When exactly do I get to know what the hell is going on?" Darius turned to face her, and the raw pain in his eyes caught her off guard. "You want the truth? Fine. I'm a werewolf, Lydia, a shapeshifter. And not just any werewolf. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. I command 17 packs, over 3,000 wolves, and I've spent the last decade fighting to maintain a peace that's barely holding." He crossed to her, and she saw the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "Your father didn't sell you to pay his debts. He sold you because I needed a human wife to legitimize a treaty with the Southern Kingdoms. You're not here because I wanted you. You're here because you're political currency." The words hit like physical blows. Lydia felt her legs go weak, but she refused to sit. "I'm... what?" "A pawn." Darius's voice was flat. "A symbol. The human wife of the Alpha King, proving that we can coexist peacefully with your kind. That's all you are. That's all you'll ever be." Lydia's vision blurred. Tears, hot and furious, spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. You bastard. Yes. I hate you. Good. Darius moved toward the door. Hate is honest. Hate I can work with. Where are you going? To make sure that wolf you saw last night wasn't one of my enemies scouting the territory. Because if it was, we're about to have much bigger problems than your wounded feelings. He left. Lydia stood in the empty dining room, shaking with rage and humiliation, and a grief she couldn't name. She'd known this marriage was transactional. She'd known she was being used. But hearing it said so bluntly, so cruelly, was somehow worse than anything she'd imagined. She was nothing to him. A prop. A piece in a game she didn't understand. And she had no way out. The next 3 days passed in a haze. Lydia stopped attending dinners. She barely ate. She spent hours in the library, reading books on mythology and folklore, trying to understand the world she'd been thrown into. Werewolves. Shapeshifters. Entire societies hidden in plain sight. It should have been impossible. But she'd seen it. She'd seen Darius's eyes in that wolf's face. On the 4th day, Garrett found her in the garden. Ma'am? He stood a respectful distance away, that scarred face unreadable. Lord Vorn asked me to check on you. I'm fine. You're not eating. I'm not hungry. Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then, he's an asshole, you know. The Lord, cold, controlling, terrible with people. But he's not cruel, not really. Lydia turned to look at him. You're defending him? No, just providing context. Garrett shifted his weight. He told you the truth because you pushed. Most people don't push. They accept the surface and don't ask questions. But you, he almost smiled. You're stubborn. Like him. I'm nothing like him. If you say so. Garrett gestured toward the house. He wants to see you. Library. Now. Tell him I'm busy. I'm not telling him that. You tell him that. He walked away, leaving Lydia alone with her anger and a decision she didn't want to make. She could refuse. Stay in the garden, avoid Darius, continue nursing her hurt pride. Or she could face him. Neither option was appealing, but sitting in the garden feeling sorry for herself wasn't going to change anything. And maybe, if she could understand this world better, she could find a way to survive it. Lydia stood and brushed dirt off her dress. Then she headed back toward the house, toward the library, toward whatever fresh hell Darius had waiting for her. He was pacing when she entered, agitation rolling off him in waves. Took you long enough. I considered not coming at all. But you did. Darius stopped pacing and faced her. We have a problem. We have several problems. This one's urgent. He crossed to the desk and unrolled a map, territories marked in different colors. Some she recognized, many she didn't. That wolf you saw 4 nights ago wasn't one of mine. Lydia's stomach dropped. You're sure? Completely. I've accounted for every member of my pack within 100 miles, which means someone else is on my territory without permission. He tapped a section of the map near the eastern border. There have been reports, scent markers that don't belong, signs of a hunting party. Why does that matter to me? Darius's expression was grim. Because hunting parties don't come onto Alpha territory by accident. Someone sent them. And the most likely target, he looked at her, is you. The room suddenly felt too small. Me? Why would anyone target me? Because you're human. Because you're vulnerable. Because taking you would humiliate me and potentially fracture the treaty you're supposed to represent. Darius rolled up the map with sharp, angry movements. I'm assigning you a personal guard. Garrett and 2 others. They'll shadow you everywhere during the day. At night, you stay in your room. No exceptions. I already stay in my room at night. Good. Continue that. Lydia wanted to argue, to rage against this new restriction. But the fear in Darius's eyes, genuine fear, not the cold control she was used to, stopped her. Who would do this? She asked instead. Who's trying to start trouble? Several candidates, rival alphas who think I'm weak for marrying a human, traditional packs who see you as an abomination, southern lords who want the treaty to fail. He rubbed his face, exhaustion showing through. Take your pick. This is because of me. Because I'm here. This is because power makes people stupid, and territorial disputes never really end. Darius moved toward the door. Garrett will be outside your room tonight. Try not to be difficult. Darius? He paused, surprise flickering across his face. It was the first time she'd used his name. Thank you for telling me, for trying to keep me safe. He studied her for a long moment. Don't thank me yet. If they really are coming for you, keeping you safe might prove impossible. Then he was gone, and Lydia was alone with a map of territories she didn't understand, and the growing certainty that she'd walked into something far more dangerous than a loveless marriage. Night fell hard and fast. Lydia paced her room, too anxious to sit still. Garrett was outside her door. She could hear him shifting position occasionally. 2 more guards were posted at the entrance to the east wing. Darius had tripled the perimeter patrols, and still she felt like prey waiting for predators to strike. Around midnight, the howling started. It came from the forest, multiple voices joining in a chorus that made every hair on Lydia's body stand on end. She moved to the window, careful to stay back from the glass. The garden was empty, but beyond the estate walls, in the darkness between the trees, she could see movement, shapes, dozens of them. The door to her room rattled. Lydia spun around, heart in her throat. Garrett? No answer. The door rattled again, harder this time. The lock held, but barely. Garrett! Lydia backed toward the window, looking frantically for anything she could use as a weapon. A letter opener on the desk. She grabbed it, the small blade ridiculous but better than nothing. The door shuddered. Wood cracked. Then, snarling, a fight erupting in the corridor outside. Garrett's voice shouting orders. Another voice, unfamiliar, laughing. The window behind Lydia exploded inward. She screamed, throwing her arms up against the shower of glass. When she looked up, a massive wolf stood in her room. Not as large as the one she'd seen before, but big enough. Its fur was gray, streaked with black, and its eyes were a burning gold. It snarled, lips pulling back from teeth designed to tear flesh. Lydia raised the letter opener with shaking hands. Stay back. The wolf laughed, actually laughed, the sound emerging distorted from its throat. Then it lunged. Lydia dove sideways, hitting the floor hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. The wolf crashed into the desk, scattering papers and books. It recovered fast, spinning toward her. The door burst open. Another wolf, black as midnight, easily twice the size of the gray one, crashed into the room, silver eyes blazing with fury. Darius. The 2 wolves collided with a force that shook the floor. They rolled, snarling and snapping, a blur of fur and teeth and violence. Blood splattered across the stone, impossible to tell whose. Lydia scrambled backward until she hit the wall, the letter opener still clutched in her hand, and watched her husband fight for her life. The gray wolf was fast, vicious, going for Darius's throat with single-minded determination. But Darius was stronger, bigger, and absolutely enraged. He caught the gray wolf by the scruff and threw it across the room. It hit the wardrobe hard enough to crack the wood. For a moment, both wolves stood still, breathing hard, blood dripping from multiple wounds. Then the gray wolf did something Lydia didn't expect. It ran. Not toward the door, toward her. She had maybe a second to register what was happening before teeth clamped around her arm. Not hard enough to break skin, but hard enough to drag her toward the broken window. Lydia screamed and drove the letter opener into the wolf's shoulder. It yelped, releasing her, and in that instant Darius was there. He hit the gray wolf like a battering ram, driving it away from Lydia and toward the window. They grappled on the edge, shattered glass crunching beneath them. Then they both fell. Lydia lunged for the window, heart in her throat, and looked down. 2 floors below, in the garden, Darius and the gray wolf were already back on their feet, circling each other. More wolves poured from the forest, some joining the gray wolf, others forming a protective circle around Darius. A full-scale battle erupted in seconds. Garrett appeared in the doorway, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. We need to move you, now. I can't just... Now, ma'am. He grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the window. There's a safe room in the west wing. Come on. Lydia let herself be dragged into the corridor, away from the sounds of battle, away from Darius fighting gods knew how many enemies to protect her. And as they ran through the dark house, one thought crystallized with absolute clarity. She couldn't stay here. This world of werewolves and territories and violence, it was going to get her killed. She had to find a way out. But when they reached the safe room, a reinforced chamber deep in the west wing, and Garrett sealed the door behind them, Lydia realized something else. She'd left the letter opener behind, and when the gray wolf had bitten her arm, she'd felt something. A heat. A burning that was still there, spreading up toward her shoulder. She looked down at her arm, pushed up the torn sleeve of her dress. Where the wolf's teeth had touched her skin, the flesh was marked. Not bitten. Marked, with symbols that glowed faintly gold in the darkness. Garrett saw them and went pale. Oh no. Oh hell no. What? Lydia's voice came out strangled. What is this? But Garrett just backed away, horror in his eyes. And outside, the howling grew louder, angrier, as if the entire forest had declared war on Vorn Hall. The symbols burned. Lydia pressed her back against the cold stone wall of the safe room, staring at the golden marks crawling up her forearm like living tattoos. They pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, each throb sending heat deeper into her veins. Garrett stood by the door, his face ashen. We need to tell him. Tell him what? Lydia's voice cracked. I don't even know what this is. It's a claim mark. Garrett wouldn't meet her eyes. That wolf, when it bit you, it wasn't trying to kill you. It was trying to mark you as pack. The room tilted. What does that mean? It means someone just declared you their territory, their property. Garrett ran a hand through his hair, smearing blood across his forehead. And if those marks take root before Lord Vorn can countermark you, the bond will be permanent. Lydia's stomach lurched. Countermark? You mean he needs to bite you? Yes. Garrett finally looked at her, and she saw genuine fear there. But it has to be consensual. Forced marks don't hold. You'd have to let him. No. The word came out flat. Absolutely not. Ma'am, you don't understand. If another alpha claims you and the bond sets, you'll be compelled to obey them, to go to them. You won't have a choice. I already don't have a choice. Lydia pushed away from the wall, pacing the small room like a caged animal. I've been sold, married off, locked in this house, and now you're telling me I need to let Darius bite me or I'll be even more trapped. It's not about being trapped. It's about survival. Whoever sent that gray wolf wants to use you against Lord Vorn. If they succeed, the building shuddered. Somewhere above them, something massive hit the ground, hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Garrett's hand went to the knife at his belt. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Where are you going? To help. He moved toward the door, then paused. If anyone except me or Lord Vorn tries to get in, don't open it. I don't care what they say. He left. Lydia locked the door with shaking hands and sank to the floor, her back against the wall. The marks on her arm had stopped glowing but still felt warm to the touch. She traced one with her finger, feeling the raised texture like a brand. Above her, the battle raged. Snarls, howls, the crash of bodies, and underneath it all, a sound that might have been screaming. She pulled her knees to her chest and tried not to think about what was happening. Tried not to picture Darius out there fighting gods knew how many enemies because she existed, because her father had sold her into this nightmare. Time crawled. Minutes felt like hours. The sounds of fighting ebbed and flowed, sometimes distant, sometimes terrifyingly close. Twice, something heavy slammed against the safe room door hard enough to make Lydia's heart stop. But the door held. Then, silence. Absolute. Suffocating. Lydia stood slowly, pressing her ear to the door. Nothing. Not even footsteps. She waited. 5 minutes. 10. A knock made her jump back. Lydia! Darius's voice, rough and strained. Open the door! She should have felt relief. Instead, something cold settled in her stomach. How do I know it's really you? A pause. Then, you stabbed that wolf with a letter opener, silver handle, inscribed with my family crest. You grabbed it off your desk without thinking. Lydia unlocked the door. Darius stood in the corridor, covered in blood. His clothes were shredded, hanging off him in tatters. Cuts covered his arms and chest, some still bleeding, but it was his eyes that stopped her. Still silver, but wild. Feral. Are you hurt? His voice was barely human. No, I mean... Lydia held up her marked arm. This. Darius went very still. Then he stepped into the room and slammed the door behind him, making her flinch. Let me see. It wasn't a request. Lydia extended her arm. Darius took it with surprising gentleness, his fingers hot against her skin. He studied the marks, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. How long ago? Maybe 30 minutes? I don't know. Time got weird. Did you accept it? What? No. Did you say anything? Think anything that might have sounded like acceptance? Lydia tried to remember. The wolf's teeth, the burning, her screaming. I don't think so. I stabbed it and it let go. Something that might have been relief flickered across Darius's face. Good. That gives us time. Garrett said you need to countermark me. Yes. And I have to consent. Yes. Lydia pulled her arm back. No. Darius's eyes flashed. Lydia, I said no. I'm not letting you bite me like some kind of animal. I'm not becoming more trapped than I already am. You're not trapped. Really? She laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. I can't leave. I can't make my own choices. I'm political currency, remember? Your words. And now you want to literally mark me as your property? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Lydia stepped closer, anger overriding fear. Explain it to me. Make me understand why I should let you do this. Darius was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. That mark on your arm? It's from Cale Draven. The name meant nothing to Lydia, but the way Darius said it, like a curse, made her stomach drop. Who? A rival alpha, exiled 5 years ago for challenging my authority. Darius turned away, pacing the small room. He's been building power in the Eastern Territories, gathering rogues and outcasts. I knew he'd make a move eventually, but I didn't think he'd go after you directly. Why me? Because you're my weakness. Darius spun back to face her. Every alpha has one, something they'll sacrifice everything to protect. And Kyle knows that if he takes you, if he makes you his, it will destroy me. Politically. Personally. Completely. Lydia's throat felt tight. You barely know me. How am I your weakness? Because you're mine. The words exploded out of him. Like it or not, you're my wife, my responsibility, and I don't fail my responsibilities. So this is about pride. This is about survival. Kel doesn't want you because he cares about you. He wants you because claiming you humiliates me, proves I can't protect what's mine. And once he has you, he'll use you to leverage concessions from me until there's nothing left of my territory or my authority. Darius crossed to her, and she saw desperation in his eyes for the first time. Please, let me do this. And if I say no, then in about 6 hours, those marks will set permanently. You'll feel a compulsion to go to Kyle, to seek him out, and nothing I do will stop it short of locking you in a cell for the rest of your life. You're already locking me in a cell. I'm keeping you safe. By controlling every aspect of my existence, Lydia's voice rose. By deciding what I can and can't do, where I can and can't go, who I can and can't talk to. I'm trying to keep you alive in a world that wants to use you as a weapon against me. They stood there, breathing hard, the space between them crackling with tension. Finally, Lydia spoke. If I let you do this, if I let you countermark me, what does that mean for me? Really mean? Darius's shoulders sagged. You'll feel the bond. It's not mind control. You'll still have free will, but you'll be aware of me. Feel my emotions sometimes, know when I'm close, and I'll be able to find you anywhere, always. So I'll never be free. You'll be alive. That's what matters. Lydia looked at her marked arm, at the golden symbols that promised a different kind of prison. Then at Darius, covered in blood, exhausted, desperate. She'd never wanted this life, any of it. But Cale Draven sounded worse. Do it. Darius blinked. What? I said do it before I change my mind. Lydia held out her arm, trying not to think about what she was agreeing to. But Darius? If you ever use this bond to control me, to make me do something I don't want to do, I will find a way to make you regret it. Understand? A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Understood. He took her arm again, this time positioning it so the marks were visible. Then he met her eyes. This is going to hurt. Everything hurts already. Darius's jaw tightened. Then he lowered his head and bit down on her forearm, right over Kael's marks. Pain exploded up Lydia's arm, white hot, searing, worse than anything she'd ever felt. She screamed, trying to pull away, but Darius held her firm. His teeth broke skin, and she felt something foreign flood into her bloodstream. Heat, power, something wild and ancient that made her want to run and fight and howl. The golden marks writhed beneath her skin, fighting the intrusion. For a moment, Lydia thought she might actually die from the competing forces tearing through her veins. Then Darius released her arm and stepped back. The golden marks were gone. In their place, twin crescents of silver wrapped around her forearm, Darius's bite, and underneath them, she could feel it. The bond, a thread connecting her to him, pulsing with awareness. She could feel his exhaustion, his pain, his fierce protective satisfaction. Lydia staggered, and Darius caught her before she fell. Easy. It takes a minute to stabilize.
I can feel you. The words came out slurred. Inside my head. That's not normal. No, it's not. Darius guided her to sit against the wall. The bond will fade a bit once the initial shock passes. You won't always feel my emotions this strongly. But you'll always know where I am. Yes. Lydia closed her eyes, trying to process. The bond hummed in her veins, foreign but somehow right, like her body recognized something it had been missing. She hated it.
The battle, she managed. What happened? We drove them off, killed 3. The rest retreated. Darius sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. But they'll be back. Kael doesn't give up easily. How do you know it was him? Did you see him? I know his scent, his tactics, and that gray wolf. Darius's voice went cold. That was Marcus, Kael's second. He doesn't go anywhere without Kael's direct orders. So Kael was here, watching. Probably. The thought made Lydia's skin crawl. Someone had been watching her, studying her, sending wolves to kidnap or kill her, and now she was marked, bonded, trapped even more thoroughly than before. I want to leave. The words came out before she could stop them. Darius went rigid beside her. What? This house, this territory, all of it. I want to go back to my family. No. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what I want. And I'm telling you it's not happening. Darius stood, the exhaustion falling away into anger. You go back to your family and you die. Kyle's people will find you within a week. Without the protections of this estate, without me, you're defenseless. Then teach me to defend myself. Against werewolves? You're human, Lydia. You can't fight what you can't match physically. So I'm just supposed to stay here forever, locked up like a prize you won? I'm not locking you up. Then prove it. Lydia stood, meeting his glare with one of her own. Let me go into town. Let me walk around without guards shadowing my every move. Let me have one single day where I'm not a prisoner in everything but name. That's suicide. That's freedom. Freedom gets you killed. Then maybe I'd rather die free than live like this. The words hung in the air between them, shocking in their finality. Darius stared at her, something broken flickering across his face. You don't mean that, don't I? Lydia's voice shook. What do I have here, Darius? A loveless marriage, a house full of people who see me as a liability, enemies trying to kidnap me, and now a bond I never wanted tying me to a man who sees me as political currency. Tell me what part of that is worth living for. He was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, dangerous. You think I want this? You think I chose to care about someone who sees me as a monster? You don't care about me. You said so yourself. I lied. The admission came out harsh. I lied because caring makes you vulnerable, makes you weak. And I can't afford weakness. But that doesn't change the fact that you're in my head now, in my blood. And the thought of Kyle getting his hands on you makes me want to burn the Eastern Territories to the ground. Lydia's breath caught. That's just the bond talking. The bond's been active for 5 minutes. I've been losing my mind over keeping you safe for weeks. Darius moved closer, and she saw the raw honesty in his eyes. I'm not good at this. At caring. At being anything other than an alpha who controls everything around him. But you, he shook his head. You make me want to be different, even when you're driving me insane. I don't know what to say to that. Say you'll stop trying to leave. Say you'll give this a chance. Not the marriage, not the political arrangement, just being here, learning this world, figuring out if there's anything worth staying for. Lydia wanted to say no, wanted to hold on to her anger like a shield, but the bond pulsed between them, and she felt the truth underneath Darius's words, the fear, the desperate hope, the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who'd been fighting alone for too long. I can't promise to stay forever, she said finally, but I'll stay for now, on one condition. Name it. Stop treating me like I'm made of glass. If I'm stuck in this world, I want to understand it, really understand it. The politics, the territories, the rules, all of it. Darius considered this. That's dangerous information. I'm already in danger, might as well know why. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Then he nodded. Fine, but we do this my way. Controlled, supervised. I can live with that. Good. He moved toward the door. We should get you cleaned up. That bite needs proper treatment. Lydia looked at her arm. The silver crescents had stopped bleeding but were already bruising. Will it scar? Yes. Countermarks always do. So I'll be branded for life. We both will be. Darius pulled up his sleeve, revealing a matching set of crescents on his own forearm, marks Lydia hadn't noticed before in the chaos. The bond goes both ways. You're not the only one who gave something up tonight. He left before she could respond. Lydia stood in the safe room, surrounded by blood and destruction, feeling the bond hum in her veins. She touched the marks on her arm, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. And somewhere in the Eastern Territories, she imagined Cale Draven felt the moment his claim was overwritten, felt his prize slip away. She wondered if that would make him give up. Somehow, she doubted it. They moved her to a new room the next day. The East Wing's compromised, Garrett explained, directing servants as they carried Lydia's belongings through the house. That window they broke through weakened the whole wall, structural damage. The new room was in the North Wing, closer to Darius's quarters, larger than the last one, with heavy curtains and windows that looked out over the mountains instead of the forest. And bars. Actual iron bars embedded in the window frames. For your protection, Garrett said when he saw her staring at them. Of course. Clara appeared with fresh clothes and a worried expression. Ma'am, if you need anything, I'm fine. Your arm is healing. Lydia pulled her sleeve down over the marks. They'd been treated with some kind of salve that smelled of herbs and something sharper. The pain had faded to a dull throb. When can I see Lord Vorn? Clara and Garrett exchanged glances. He's in meetings, Garrett said finally. The attack last night, there are consequences, politics to manage. I want to be there. Ma'am, those meetings are for understanding how this world works, which is exactly what Darius promised to teach me. Lydia crossed her arms. Take me to him. Garrett looked pained. He gave specific orders that you rest today. I don't care what he ordered. Take me to him or I'll find him myself. Another exchanged glance. Then Garrett sighed. This way. They descended through the house, past the damaged east wing, where servants were already repairing the broken window. Lydia caught glimpses of bloodstains on the floor, claw marks gouged into walls. Evidence of how close last night's attack had come to succeeding. The meeting was in a room Lydia hadn't seen before. A war room, essentially. Maps covered the walls. A massive table dominated the center, marked with colored pins representing gods knew what territories or forces. Darius stood at the head of the table, surrounded by 6 other men. All of them went silent when Lydia entered. I said she was to rest. Darius's voice was flat. I said I wanted to learn. Lydia moved to stand beside him, ignoring the stares. You promised. A muscle in Darius's jaw jumped, but after a moment he gestured to the empty chair beside him. Sit. Don't interrupt. Lydia sat. The men around the table were all werewolves. She could tell now, something about the way they held themselves. The oldest one, gray-haired with scars across his face, spoke first. As I was saying, Kael's forces are massing along the eastern border. We have reports of at least 50 wolves, maybe more. They're not even trying to hide it. He's sending a message, another man said, younger, with nervous energy, showing us he's not afraid, or he's preparing for a full assault. The gray-haired man tapped a pin on the map. If he pushes here, we'll have to pull forces from the northern territories to defend. which leaves the North vulnerable. Darius's hands clenched on the table. Exactly what he wants. So what do we do? Nervous Energy Man looked around the table. We can't fight on two fronts.
We don't fight at all. Everyone turned to Lydia. She felt heat rush to her face, but forced herself to continue. That's what he wants, isn't it? A war. So don't give him one. And just let him mass forces on our border? Greyhair's voice dripped skepticism. That's suicide.
It's strategy. Lydia leaned forward. If Kyle wants a war, it's because he thinks he can win one, or because he wants to destabilize Darius's authority by making him look weak for not responding. Either way, engaging is playing into his hands. Darius was watching her with an unreadable expression. Go on. You said I'm political currency. Fine. Use that. Kale tried to claim me and failed. That makes him look weak. Broadcast that. Make sure every pack knows he couldn't hold on to his prize. Lydia touched the marks on her arm. And make it clear that any further attempts will be met with… What? What's the worst thing you could do to him politically? Cut off his supply lines, Darius said slowly. Most of Kyle's support comes from border packs who need access to northern hunting grounds. If I revoke those permissions, you starve him out without firing a shot. Lydia sat back. Metaphorically, anyway. Silence around the table. Then Greyhair started laughing, a rough, surprised sound. She's got teeth. I like it. It could work, Nervous Energy Man admitted. Force Kyle to either back down or overextend himself trying to secure new territories. Darius was still watching Lydia, something like approval in his eyes. It's risky. If Kale calls our bluff and attacks anyway, we'll be fighting at a disadvantage. But if he backs down, you win without bloodshed. Lydia met his gaze. Isn't that worth the risk? Maybe. Darius turned back to the table. Draft the proclamations. I want every border pack to know their hunting rights are contingent on zero support for Kyle's faction. And get word to the Eastern Watchtowers. Any movement from Kyle's forces gets reported directly to me. The men dispersed, taking their arguments and plans with them. Soon, only Darius and Lydia remained in the war room. That was bold, Darius said finally. You told me not to interrupt. You didn't say I couldn't contribute. No, I didn't. He moved to stand beside her, looking down at the map. You did well. Better than well. That strategy might actually work. Might? Kyle's unpredictable. He might back down, he might double down, or he might… Darius stopped. Might what? Might come for you directly, skip the politics and go straight for the personal. Lydia's stomach dropped. You think he will? I think he's obsessed with proving I'm weak, and taking you from me would do that more effectively than any military victory. Darius turned to face her. Which is why you need to understand something. The bond we have? It's not just for show. If Kyle gets close to you, I'll know, I'll feel it, and I will come for you. Even if it's a trap? Especially if it's a trap. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified her. That's exactly what he wants. For you to act irrationally, to choose me over strategy. I know. Darius's expression was grim, which is why you can never let yourself get taken, because if you do, I'll burn the world down to get you back. And KL knows it. Lydia felt the bond pulse between them, carrying the weight of his words, the absolute truth of them. I'm a liability, she said quietly. You're a complication. There's a difference. Darius moved toward the door. Come on. If you want to learn this world, there's someone you should meet. Who? My mother, Chad. Darius's mother lived in the southern wing, in rooms Lydia hadn't known existed. She doesn't leave them much, Darius explained as they walked. Hasn't for years. Not since my father died. How did he die? In a challenge. Another alpha wanted his territory. They fought. He lost. Darius's voice was emotionless, but the bond carried grief underneath. Old, deep. I was 19. I killed the challenger the next day and took over the pack. You killed someone when you were 19? Welcome to werewolf politics. They stopped in front of an ornate door. Darius knocked twice, then entered without waiting for a response. The rooms beyond were warm, the first truly warm space Lydia had encountered in Vorn Hall. Fires burned in 2 fireplaces, heavy rugs covered the floors.
And sitting in a chair by the window, wrapped in blankets despite the heat, was an old woman. Not old in years. Lydia guessed maybe 60. But old in the way grief ages people. Worn, tired. "Mother?" Darius crossed to her, bending to kiss her cheek. "I brought someone to meet you." The woman's eyes, the same silver as Darius's, focused on Lydia. The human wife. "Lydia," Darius corrected. "Her name is Lydia." "I know what her name is." The woman gestured to a chair. "Sit, child. Let me look at you." Lydia sat, acutely aware of being examined. "She's marked," the woman said to Darius. "Yes." "Countermarked?" "Last night, Kyle made a move." The woman's expression hardened. That bastard. He never could leave well enough alone. She turned back to Lydia. "Show me." Lydia hesitated, then pulled up her sleeve. The silver crescents gleamed in the firelight. The woman took Lydia's arm with surprisingly strong hands, studying the marks. "Clean work. No infection. You're lucky. Some marks fester." "Mother was a healer," Darius explained. Before I became a widow." The woman released Lydia's arm. "You can call me Helena. Everyone else does." "It's nice to meet you." "Is it?" Helena's smile was sharp. "I imagine meeting your husband's family under these circumstances is many things. Nice probably isn't one of them." Despite herself, Lydia smiled. "No, you're right. I usually am." Helena settled back in her chair. "Darius tells me you want to understand our world." "Why?" "Because I'm stuck in it. I might as well know the rules." "Smart girl." Helena glanced at her son. "Leave us. I want to talk to your wife alone." Darius looked like he wanted to argue. Then he sighed. "Don't terrify her." "I make no promises." He left. The silence that followed was heavy. Helena studied Lydia with an intensity that made her want to squirm. "You're afraid of him," Helena said finally. "Sometimes." "Good. Fear keeps you cautious. But you're also angry at him. That's good too. Anger keeps you strong." Helena poured tea from a pot on the side table, handing a cup to Lydia. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." "That's a tall order." Helena sipped her tea. "Let's start with basics. What has Darius told you about pack structure?" "Nothing, just that he's the Alpha King. Men." Helena rolled her eyes. "Always assuming everyone understands their world by osmosis." "All right. Lesson 1. Werewolf society is built on strength and hierarchy. Alphas rule packs. Betas serve as seconds. Omegas—" She paused. "Omegas are rare. Born with the ability to calm other wolves, valued and protected. And humans? Mostly irrelevant. Some packs tolerate them, some hunt them. Darius's pack falls somewhere in between. We don't hunt, but we don't exactly welcome them either." Helena fixed Lydia with a sharp look. "Until you. You're the first human to marry into Alpha bloodline in 3 generations." "Why?" "Because it's dangerous for both sides. Humans are fragile. Werewolves are violent. Mixing the two rarely ends well." Helena set down her cup. "But Darius needed the political alliance, needed to prove he could coexist with human society, so he married you. And now I'm trapped. Now you're bonded. There's a difference." Helena leaned forward. "The bond Darius gave you? It's protection, yes, but it's also power. You can feel him, his emotions, his location. That works both ways. He can't hide from you any more than you can hide from him." Lydia hadn't thought about that. "So I'll know if he's lying to me. Eventually, once you learn to read the bond properly. Right now it's probably overwhelming. All sensation, no clarity. But in time," Helena smiled, "in time, you'll know him better than anyone alive, including himself." "I'm not sure I want that." "No one ever does. But knowledge is power, child. And in this world, you need every advantage you can get." They talked for hours. Helena explained pack dynamics, territorial disputes, the complex web of alliances that kept werewolf society from tearing itself apart. She was blunt, sometimes brutal in her honesty, but she answered every question Lydia asked. Finally, as evening light started to fade, Helena stood. "One more thing. About Kyle." Lydia's attention sharpened. "What about him? He's dangerous."
More dangerous than Darius wants to admit. Kale doesn't just want power, he wants to remake werewolf society entirely. Tear down the old hierarchies, create something new. Helena moved to the window, looking out over the grounds. And he's charismatic. People follow him not out of fear, but belief. That makes him harder to fight than any traditional alpha. Why are you telling me this? Because if Kyle gets his hands on you, he won't just use you against Darius politically. He'll try to convert you, convince you his way is better, freer. Helena turned back. And the terrifying part? He might be right. The words hung in the air like a threat. You think I'd betray Darius? I think you're smart enough to question whether the cage you're in is the only option. Helena crossed back to her chair. Just remember, Kyle might offer freedom, but it comes with a price. Everything does. A knock at the door interrupted them. Darius entered, his expression carefully neutral. It's getting late. Helena waved him off. We're just finishing. Take your wife to dinner. She needs to eat. Lydia stood, surprised to find her legs stiff from sitting so long. Thank you for talking to me. Come back tomorrow. We're not done yet. As they left, Lydia felt Helena's eyes on her back, weighing, measuring. In the corridor, Darius spoke quietly. What did she tell you? Everything. Nothing. I'm not sure. Lydia glanced at him. She said Kyle wants to remake Werewolf Society. What did she mean? Darius's expression darkened. Kale believes the alpha system is corrupt. That hierarchy based on strength alone breeds violence and abuse. He wants to create something more democratic, where wolves have a say in who leads them. That doesn't sound terrible. It's not, in theory. They descended the stairs. In practice, it means chaos. Constant challenges, packs fracturing into factions, everything we've built to maintain peace falling apart. Or maybe it means actual freedom. Darius stopped walking. You sound like you're considering his position. I'm considering all positions, like you told me to. Lydia met his gaze. You wanted me to understand this world. Understanding means looking at it from every angle, even the ones you don't like. For a moment, she thought he might argue. Then he laughed, short, surprised. You're going to be a nightmare, aren't you? Probably. Good. He started walking again. I'm sick of people who just agree with everything I say. They reached the dining room to find dinner already laid out. Darius held out her chair, and Lydia sat, hyper-aware of the bond humming between them. It had faded from the overwhelming intensity of last night, but was still there, constant, undeniable. As they ate, Lydia found herself watching Darius, really watching him, the way he moved, the control in every gesture, the exhaustion he tried to hide. What? He asked, catching her stare. I'm trying to figure you out. Good luck. I've been trying for 30 years and haven't succeeded yet. Lydia smiled, despite herself. Helena said the bond will let me know you better eventually. Know when you're lying. She's not wrong. Darius set down his fork. Is that what you want? To catch me in lies? I want to understand what I've gotten into. All of it. He studied her for a long moment. Then, ask me anything. Right now. I'll answer honestly. Lydia considered. There were 1,000 questions, but only one that mattered. Do you regret marrying me? Darius didn't hesitate. No. Even though I'm a complication, a liability, you're also the first person in years who's challenged me to be better instead of just stronger. He leaned back in his chair. I don't do well with boredom, Lydia. You're many things, but you're definitely not boring. Is that a compliment? From me? Yes. They finished dinner in companionable silence. Afterward, Darius walked her back to her new room. Sleep well, he said at the door. Tomorrow we start your real education, combat training. Combat? You said humans can't fight werewolves. You can't win, but you can survive long enough for help to arrive. That's worth learning. He hesitated, then added, and it might help you feel less trapped, knowing you're not completely helpless. Before Lydia could respond, he walked away, leaving her alone in the corridor. She entered her room and locked the door, then moved to the barred window. Outside, the mountains rose black against the stars. Somewhere out there, Kale Draven was planning his next move, and somewhere inside her, the bond pulsed with awareness of Darius settling into his own room 3 corridors away. Lydia touched the marks on her arm and wondered which prison was worse, The one Darius offered, or the freedom Kyle promised? She had a feeling she was about to find out. Because 3 weeks later, when the spring festival brought dozens of packs to Vorn Hall for the annual gathering, Lydia would come face to face with Kyle Draven himself. And everything she thought she understood about loyalty, freedom, and choice would shatter. But she didn't know that yet. For now, she was just a human woman in a world of monsters trying to survive one day at
3 weeks changed everything. Lydia learned to fight. Or rather, she learned to survive long enough to scream for help, which Garrett insisted was the same thing. Every morning before dawn, she met him in the training yard, a stone courtyard behind the main house where the ground was already stained dark from years of combat practice.
Again, Garrett barked, circling her. You're dead. You were dead 10 seconds ago. Lydia wiped sweat from her eyes, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The wooden training knife felt slippery in her grip.
I'm trying. Trying gets you killed. Move like you mean it. He lunged. Lydia dodged left, bringing the knife up toward where his ribs would be. But Garrett was faster, catching her wrist and twisting until the knife clattered to the stones. Better. Still dead, but better. He released her. You're thinking too much. Your body knows what to do. Let it.
My body knows how to run away and hide. That's about it.
Then we build on that.
Garrett tossed her the knife.
Running and hiding kept humans alive for millennia. There's no shame in survival. They drilled until Lydia's muscles screamed. Strikes, blocks, how to break a hold, where to hit to cause maximum pain with minimum strength. Garrett was brutal but fair, never letting her quit, never accepting less than her best effort.
Darius watched sometimes from the gallery above. Lydia could feel him through the bond, satisfaction when she landed a good hit, concern when Garrett pushed too hard. She tried to ignore the intrusion of his emotions mixing with hers. Tried, and mostly failed. You're distracted, Garrett said, noticing her attention drift. He's watching. So? Pretend I'm about to rip your throat out. That usually helps with focus. Lydia laughed despite herself. Then Garrett moved and she had to dance backward, barely avoiding the sweep of his leg that would have taken her feet out from under her. The days developed a rhythm. Training at dawn. Breakfast alone while Darius handled pack business. Afternoons with Helena, learning the intricate web of werewolf politics. Evenings with Darius, sometimes in his study reviewing maps and territory disputes, sometimes just sitting in the library while he worked and she read.
It was almost normal, almost comfortable. That should have been her first warning. The spring festival announcement came on a Tuesday. Darius presented it over dinner, his expression carefully neutral. Every year, the Northern Packs gather at Vorn Hall for 3 days. Politics, trade negotiations, settling disputes. He cut his meat with precise movements. It's mandatory, and you'll need to attend. Lydia's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Me? You're my wife. Your presence legitimizes the treaty with human territories. They'll expect to see you. How many people are we talking about? 200, maybe more. Darius met her eyes. I know it's a lot, but you'll be safe. I'll have guards on you at all times. The bond carried his concern, thick and genuine. Lydia forced herself to nod. When? 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare for being paraded in front of 200 werewolves who probably saw her as either a curiosity or a weakness. Perfect. Helena was more direct when Lydia told her the next day. It's going to be a nightmare, the older woman said bluntly. Half of them will want to kill you just for existing. The other half will want to use you against Darius, and you'll have to smile through all of it. That's encouraging. I'm not here to encourage you. I'm here to prepare you. Helena pulled out a stack of papers covered in names and pack affiliations. These are the major players you'll meet. Memorize them. Their packs, their alliances. Who hates who? Who's sleeping with who? All of it. Lydia stared at the stack. This is insane. This is survival. Knowledge is the only weapon you have that works as well as theirs. Helena tapped the first page. Start with the Northridge pack. Alpha Marcus. Yes, the same Marcus who tried to mark you. He'll be here with his alpha, Kyle Draven. Lydia's blood ran cold. Kale is coming here? He's the alpha of the Eastern Territories. Of course he's coming. Darius can't bar him without violating pack law. Helena's expression softened slightly. I know you're afraid, but you need to meet him eventually. Better here, on Darius's territory, surrounded by allies. Does Darius know I'm afraid? Through the bond? Probably. He can feel strong emotions, but he won't push you to talk about it unless you want to. That was true. Despite the bond, despite the forced proximity, Darius had maintained a careful distance, respectful, almost cold, like he was afraid of getting too close. Lydia buried herself in preparation. Names, faces, pack histories, political alliances that shifted like sand. She fell into bed exhausted every night, her dreams full of golden eyes and teeth. The bond grew stronger. She could feel Darius across the estate now, a constant presence in the back of her mind. Sometimes she'd wake in the night and know he was awake too, working in his study, worrying about things he wouldn't share. Once, she found herself walking toward his study at 2 a.m, drawn by a spike of distress through the bond. She stopped outside his door, hand raised to knock. Inside, something crashed. Darius swore, the word bitten off and vicious. Lydia knocked. Silence. Then, "Come in." She pushed the door open to find Darius standing behind his desk, a shattered whiskey glass at his feet. Blood dripped from his hand where he'd apparently gripped the glass hard enough to break it. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." He grabbed a cloth, wrapping it around his palm. "You should be sleeping." "So should you." Lydia crossed to him, taking his hand before he could protest. The cut was deep, still bleeding. "What happened?" "I got a report from the eastern border. Kyle's moving more forces into position." Darius's jaw clenched. "He's planning something. I can feel it." "Then cancel the festival." "I can't. Pack law requires it. If I cancel, it's an admission of weakness. Every alpha with ambitions would see it as an invitation to challenge me." Lydia carefully cleaned the cut, acutely aware of how close they were standing. The bond hummed between them, carrying exhaustion and frustration. And something else. Something warmer. "You can't protect me from everything," she said quietly. "I can try." "And burn yourself out in the process? What good does that do either of us?" Darius was silent for a moment. Then he covered her hand with his uninjured one, stopping her movements. "I'm not used to this. Caring about someone other than the pack, it's disorienting." "The bond?" "The bond makes it stronger, but it started before that." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "You're not what I expected, Lydia." "What did you expect?" "Someone easier to dismiss. Someone who'd accept their role and not push back." His mouth quirked in something almost like a smile. "I should have known better. Your father warned me you were stubborn." "My father barely knew me." "Then I'm glad I get the chance to." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Lydia found herself leaning closer, drawn by the bond and something deeper, something that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the man standing in front of her. Darius's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He pulled back, checking the message, and his expression went cold. "What?" "Cale just confirmed his attendance. He's bringing a delegation of 50 wolves." Darius set the phone down with controlled force. "He's making a statement." "Then we make one back. Show him you're not intimidated." "We?" Lydia met his eyes. "I'm your wife. This is my fight too now, whether I like it or not." Something fierce and possessive flashed across Darius's face. The bond flared hot, carrying emotions Lydia couldn't quite name but felt in her bones. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what? For not running? For staying? For—" He shook his head. "Just thank you." Lydia left before she could do something stupid like kiss him, because the pull she felt toward Darius was getting harder to ignore, and she wasn't sure how much of it was genuine and how much was the bond making her feel things that weren't real. The distinction was becoming harder to see. The festival began on a Friday that dawned cold and clear. Lydia woke before sunrise, her stomach in knots. Clara helped her dress in formal clothes, a deep green gown that made her look almost regal, almost like she belonged. "You'll be fine, ma'am," Clara said, pinning Lydia's hair up. "Just remember to breathe." "And if I forget?" "Then Lord Vorn will remind you." Clara's smile was genuine. "He hasn't taken his eyes off the door to your room for the past hour. I think he's more nervous than you are." Lydia could feel it through the bond. Darius's anxiety was a living thing, mixing with her own until she couldn't tell where his emotions ended and hers began. She found him waiting in the corridor, dressed in formal black with silver accents. He looked every inch the Alpha King, powerful, controlled, dangerous. His eyes swept over her, and the Bond carried his approval. "You look beautiful." I look terrified. That too, but mostly beautiful. He offered his arm. "Ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." They descended together, Lydia's hand resting on Darius's arm. She could feel the coiled tension in his muscles, the predator awareness of someone preparing for battle. The great hall had been transformed. Long tables lined the walls, laden with food and drink. Banners hung from the ceiling representing different packs, wolves in a dozen colors and styles, and everywhere, people. Wolves. They turned as Darius and Lydia entered, conversations dying mid-sentence. The weight of their combined stares was suffocating. Darius's hand covered hers, grounding. "Breathe," Lydia breathed. "Lords and alphas of the Northern Territories," Darius's voice carried across the hall. "Welcome to Vorn Hall. Let the spring festival begin." A cheer went up, but Lydia barely heard it, because standing near the back of the hall, watching her with eyes the color of amber, was the most striking man she'd ever seen. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders, and a face that looked like it had been carved by someone who understood beauty and danger in equal measure. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, a white shirt open at the collar, but carried himself with the same lethal grace as Darius. Kyle Draven. Their eyes met across the crowded hall, and Lydia felt something shift. Not the bond. That was still firmly attached to Darius. But something else. Recognition. Like looking at a mirror and seeing something unexpected reflected back. Kale smiled. It was not a nice smile. Then he turned away, melting into the crowd. "That was him," Lydia whispered. "I know." Darius's voice was tight. "Stay close to me. Don't let him isolate you." The next 3 hours were a blur of introductions. Alphas with hard eyes and harder handshakes. Their mates studying Lydia like she was a specimen under glass. Betas and pack members who ranged from curious to openly hostile. Lydia smiled until her face hurt, answered questions with careful neutrality. Let Darius guide her through the social minefield while trying not to think about Kael's amber eyes watching from somewhere in the crowd. It was during a lull in conversations that he approached. "Lord Vorn." Kael's voice was smooth, cultured, nothing like the monster Lydia had been expecting. "Thank you for hosting. Your hall is as impressive as ever." "Kael?" Darius's arm tightened on Lydia's waist. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "And miss the chance to meet your famous human bride?" "Never." Kael turned his full attention to Lydia, and she felt the force of it like a physical blow. "Mrs. Vorn, I've heard so much about you." "All lies, I'm sure." The words came out steadier than Lydia felt. Kael laughed, genuine amusement lighting his face. "Oh, I like her. She's got spine." He extended a hand. "Kyle Draven. But you already knew that." Lydia hesitated, then took his hand. The touch sent a shock through her system, not pain, but awareness, like touching a live wire. Kael's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across his features. "Interesting," he murmured. "The bond is strong. Stronger than I expected." "Release her." Darius's voice was deadly quiet. Kael held on for another heartbeat, his thumb brushing across Lydia's knuckles. Then he let go, stepping back with his hands raised in mock surrender. "Apologies. I didn't mean to overstep." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I simply wanted to meet the woman brave enough to marry the Alpha King. That takes courage. Or desperation." "Careful." Darius moved between them, his body language screaming threat. "Or what? You'll start a war in your own hall during a sacred festival?" Kael's expression hardened. "We both know you won't. You care too much about appearances, about maintaining order." His eyes flicked to Lydia. "About protecting fragile things." Lydia felt anger surge through her. Her own, not Darius's. "I'm not fragile." "No?" Kael tilted his head, studying her. "Then prove it. Tomorrow night, there's a gathering, informal. Just wolves talking honestly about the future of our kind. Come. Hear what we have to say without your husband filtering every word." "Absolutely not." Darius's hand found Lydia's again, possessive.
She's not going anywhere near you or your people. I wasn't asking you. Cale kept his eyes on Lydia. I was asking her, or does she not get to make her own choices? The question hung in the air like a blade. Lydia felt dozens of eyes on them, felt the tension ratcheting higher with every second. And through the bond, she felt Darius's fury mixing with his fear that she might actually consider it. I'll think about it, she said finally. Kael's smile widened. That's all I ask. Until tomorrow, then. He disappeared back into the crowd, leaving Lydia standing beside a husband who was vibrating with barely controlled rage. We're leaving. Darius's grip on her arm was just shy of painful. We can't just... now. He practically dragged her from the hall, ignoring the stares and whispers. They made it to his study before Lydia wrenched her arm free. What the hell was that? That was you nearly getting yourself killed, Darius slammed the door. Do you have any idea what he was doing? That wasn't a friendly invitation. It was a challenge. A challenge to what? Listen to someone talk? A challenge to my authority over you, to our bond, to everything. Darius paced like a caged animal. And you said you'd think about it, in front of everyone. You made me look weak. I made you look like you don't own me. I'm trying to keep you safe. By controlling every aspect of my life? By deciding who I can and can't talk to? Lydia's voice rose. That's not safety, Darius. That's a prison, and you know it. The bond flared between them. Anger and fear and hurt all tangled together until Lydia couldn't breathe. Darius stopped pacing, his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was raw. If you go to that gathering, if you spend time with Kael alone, he will try to turn you against me. He will lie, manipulate, show you every flaw I have, and promise you freedom I can't give, and you might believe him. You don't trust me. I don't trust him. Darius turned. And I don't trust that you can see him clearly when he's offering exactly what you want. Escape from this life. Lydia felt tears sting her eyes. I'm not going to betray you. You say that now, but Kael is persuasive, charismatic. He makes people believe impossible things. Darius crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. Promise me you won't go. Promise me you'll stay away from him. I can't promise that. His hands dropped. What? If I promise to avoid him, I'm letting you control me, letting you decide what I can and can't do based on your fear. Lydia met his eyes. I need to make this choice myself. Trust that I'll make the right one. And if you don't, then I guess you'll know what I'm really worth to you. A partner who can think for herself or a possession you can lock away. Darius stared at her, the bond carrying such a complex mix of emotions Lydia couldn't parse them all. Then he walked to his desk, picked up a stack of papers, and threw them across the room. Get out. Darius, I said get out. Lydia fled. She made it to her room before the tears came. Great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. The bond was a knife in her chest, carrying Darius's pain and anger and the terrible fear that she was going to choose Kael's promises over his protection. Was she? The question haunted her through dinner, which she ate alone in her room. Through the evening, as sounds of the festival drifted up from below. Through the long night as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling Darius pacing in his study 3 corridors away. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She was going to Kael's gathering. Not because she believed him, not because she wanted to hurt Darius, but because she needed to prove to Darius, to herself, to every wolf who saw her as a weakness, that she could stand on her own, make her own choices, even dangerous ones. The bond would tell Darius what she'd decided the moment she committed to it. So Lydia got dressed in simple clothes, splashed water on her face, and went to find him. He was in the training yard fighting Garrett, or rather, demolishing him. Lydia watched from the doorway as Darius moved with lethal precision, every strike calculated to cause maximum damage. Garrett was good, but he was outmatched, and they both knew it. The fight ended with Garrett on his back, Darius's hand around his throat. Yield, Garrett tapped out. Darius released him immediately, helping him up. That's when he saw Lydia. The bond flared recognition, then understanding as he felt her resolve. No. The word was flat, final. I'm going. Like hell you are, Darius crossed to her, and Lydia saw real fear in his eyes. Lydia, please, I'm asking you, begging you, don't do this. I have to. Why? To prove some point? To show me you're not afraid? He grabbed her hands. You don't need to prove anything. I already know you're brave, strong, stubborn as hell. But this is me making a choice. My choice. Lydia pulled her hands free. You can respect that, or you can try to stop me. But if you stop me, if you lock me up or forbid me to go, you'll prove everything KL said about you, that you see me as property, something to control. Darius looked like she'd stabbed him. That's not fair. None of this is fair. But it's the situation we're in. Lydia touched his face, feeling stubble rough under her palm. Trust me, please. Just this once, trust me to handle myself. The Bond carried his agony, his desperate need to say yes, warring with his terror of what might happen if he did. Finally, he stepped back. Take Garrett with you. Kael said wolves only. Then don't go. Darius, those are my terms. Garrett goes or you stay. His voice was iron. I'm already compromising more than I should. Don't push me further. Lydia considered, then nodded. Fine. Garrett comes, but he stays outside. I go in alone. Deal. They stood in the training yard, the morning sun casting long shadows, and Lydia wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. That night, she'd find out. The gathering was in the East Wing, a section of Vorn Hall that had been given to Kyle's delegation. Lydia approached it after dinner, Garrett a silent shadow at her back. Last chance to turn around, he muttered. Not helping. Wasn't trying to help, was trying to save your life. They reached the door. Lydia could hear voices inside, laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses. Garrett positioned himself beside the entrance. I'll be here. If anything happens, scream. I'll have you out in seconds. Thank you. Lydia knocked. The door opened. Cale stood there, dressed casually in dark jeans and a gray sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous instead of less. You came. He sounded genuinely surprised. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't. But you did. That takes courage. He stepped aside. Come in. Leave your guard outside. He stays near the door. Fair enough. Lydia entered. The room was smaller than she expected, set up with comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. About 20 wolves occupied them, a mix of ages and genders, all watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Everyone, this is Lydia Vorn. Lydia, this is everyone who matters. Cale gestured to an empty chair. Sit. We were just discussing the future of pack governance. Lydia sat, hyper-aware of being the only human in a room full of predators. The conversation resumed, but it wasn't what Lydia expected. No talk of war or violence. Instead, they discussed representation, elections, ways to give pack members a voice in decisions that affected their lives. The alpha system is built on strength, a young woman said, but strength alone doesn't make a good leader. We've all seen alphas who were powerful but terrible rulers. Murmurs of agreement. So what's the alternative, Basumo? An older man asked. Democracy? Pack members voting on every decision? That's chaos. Democracy is messy, Kael agreed, but it's also fair. Everyone gets a say. Everyone's voice matters. His eyes found Lydia. What do you think? She felt everyone's attention shift to her. I think any system can be corrupted. Democracy, hierarchy, whatever. The question isn't which system is perfect, it's which one does the least harm. And in your experience? Kael leaned forward. Which system has done you less harm? The human democracy you came from, or the werewolf hierarchy you married into? It was a trap. Lydia could feel it, but she answered honestly anyway. Both have hurt me. My family's debts happened under democracy. My forced marriage happened under hierarchy. Neither system protected me when it mattered. Silence. Then Kael smiled. Exactly. Systems fail when they prioritize power over people. That's what we're trying to change here. Not just for wolves, but for everyone caught in the crossfire of our politics. He stood, pacing the circle. Darius is a good alpha, strong, fair by traditional standards, but he's still an autocrat. One man making decisions for thousands. And when that one man decides your life is worth less than his political agenda, his eyes locked on Lydia. Well, you know how that ends. Lydia's heart pounded. He's not, isn't he? He married you for political leverage.
bonded you without explaining the full implications, keeps you locked in his estate like a prize he won. Kael crouched beside her chair, his voice gentle. I'm not saying he's a monster. I'm saying the system that created him makes monsters inevitable, and you're proof of what that system does to people who can't fight back. The words hit too close to home. Lydia felt tears prick her eyes, hated herself for it. I should go. Stay. Kael's hand covered hers. Please, just listen for a few more minutes, then decide. Lydia should have pulled away, should have run, but something in Kael's voice, genuine compassion maybe, or just really good acting, made her stay.
They talked for another hour. About pack reform. About creating councils where wolves could petition for changes. About limiting alpha authority through checks and balances. It all sounded reasonable, fair, maybe even possible. When Lydia finally left, her head was spinning. Garrett fell into step beside her, silent but judging. Don't say it, Lydia muttered. Wasn't going to say anything. But you smell like him now. Lord Vorn's going to lose his mind. Lydia stopped walking. What? Werewolf thing. When you spend time in someone's space, their scent clings to you. It'll fade in a few hours, but Garrett grimaced. Might want to shower before you see him. Too late. Darius was waiting in the corridor outside her room, and the moment he saw her, his expression went cold. How was your meeting? Educational. I'm sure. He moved closer, and Lydia saw his nostrils flare. He touched you. He shook my hand. He did more than that. I can smell him all over you. Then you're smelling the room, not him. We just talked, Darius. About what? His plans to overthrow the entire pack structure? His vision of werewolf democracy? Darius's voice dripped scorn. Let me guess. He made it all sound so reasonable, so fair, made me sound like a tyrant keeping you prisoner. Lydia's silence was answer enough. Darius laughed, bitter and sharp. Of course he did. That's his specialty. Taking truths and twisting them until you can't tell where reality ends and manipulation begins. Maybe he didn't have to twist anything. Maybe I already knew you were controlling me and just needed someone to say it out loud. The bond flared with so much pain Lydia actually gasped. Darius stumbled back like she'd hit him. You believe him. You actually believe I'm... He shook his head. I've given you everything. Protection. Honesty. Freedom within the constraints of what's safe. And it's still not enough. I'm still the villain in your story. You bonded me without explaining what it really meant. I saved your life. You claimed me. There's a difference. They stood in the corridor, breathing hard, the bond between them crackling with hurt and fury. Then Garrett's radio crackled. His face went white as he listened. My lord, we have a problem. Darius's attention snapped to him. What problem? The eastern watchtower just went dark. No response to hails, and there are reports of movement in the forest. A lot of movement. Darius swore. Sound the alarm. Full defensive positions. Now. Garrett ran. Darius turned back to Lydia, and she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Get to the safe room. Lock yourself in. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Garrett. What's happening? What I told you would happen. Kael was distracting us. Darius gripped her arms. That gathering? That whole innocent conversation you just had? That was him keeping you occupied while his forces moved into position. He played you, Lydia, and I tried to warn you. Horror flooded through her. No, he wouldn't. He absolutely would. Because that's what he does. He makes you trust him, makes you think he's the reasonable one, and then he stabs you in the back while you're still smiling. Darius released her, already moving toward the stairs. Safe room, now. And if Kael gets through my defenses and tries to take you, you fight. You hear me? You fight until I can get to you. He disappeared down the corridor, leaving Lydia standing alone with the realization crashing over her in waves. She'd been played, used. Kael had never wanted to help her. He'd wanted to divide her from Darius, weaken his defenses, create the perfect opening for an attack. And she'd given it to him. Lydia ran for the safe room, the sounds of alarm bells ringing through the estate. She sealed herself inside, hands shaking, and felt through the bond as Darius shifted into his wolf form and prepared for war. This was her fault. All of it. And now people were going to die because she'd been stupid enough to think someone like Cale Draven gave a damn about her freedom. Minutes passed like hours. Through the bond, she felt Darius fighting, felt his fury and his fear and his absolute determination to protect what was his. Then the safe room door shuddered, once, twice. On the third hit, it cracked. Lydia backed into the corner, grabbed the first weapon she could find, a fire poker, and raised it with shaking hands. The door exploded inward, and standing in the shattered doorway, amber eyes glowing in the darkness, was Cale Draven in his wolf form, massive, terrifying, unstoppable. He shifted back to human in seconds, naked and unconcerned about it. Blood streaked his chest and arms. "Hello, Lydia." His voice was calm, pleasant. "I'm afraid we need to have a conversation about your future." Lydia swung the fire poker with everything she had. Cale caught it one-handed, wrenching it from her grip and tossing it aside like a toy. The metal clattered across the stone floor, useless. "Don't!" His voice was gentle, almost sad. "You'll only hurt yourself." "Stay back!" Lydia's voice shook, but she held her ground. "Darius will kill you for this." "Darius is busy trying not to die." Cale stepped into the safe room, and Lydia saw the calculation in his amber eyes. "I have maybe 3 minutes before he realizes where I am. So let's make this quick. Come with me now, willingly, and no one else has to die tonight." "Go to hell. Been there, didn't care for it." Cale moved closer, and Lydia pressed herself against the wall. "You're angry. I understand. You think I used you, lied to you. But everything I said in that gathering was true. Darius is a tyrant. The system is broken, and you deserve better than being his political prop. You attacked his home. I'm taking back what's mine, territory, authority. And yes," his eyes raked over her, "you. Because that bond Darius forced on you, it can be broken, replaced. You don't have to be his prisoner." Through the bond, Lydia felt Darius's sudden spike of terror as he realized Cale had breached the inner defenses, felt him fighting to get to her, bodies and walls standing in his way. "He's coming," Lydia whispered. "I know. Which is why we're leaving. Now." Cale reached for her. Lydia screamed. The sound tore from her throat, raw and desperate, carrying through the bond like a flare. Darius's response was immediate. Rage and fear, and a promise of violence that made Lydia's blood run cold. Cale swore, grabbing Lydia's arm. "Stupid girl, you just sentenced people to death." "Then their blood's on your hands, not mine." She fought, clawed at his face, his arms, anything she could reach. But Cale was stronger, faster, and he had her pinned against the wall in seconds, one hand around her throat. "Listen to me very carefully." His voice was still calm, but something cold had entered his eyes. "I came here tonight offering you a choice, freedom or slavery, but you just chose violence. So here's what happens now. You come with me, or I kill everyone in this building. Your guards, the servants, Darius's mother, every single person who matters to him, one by one, while he watches. Is that what you want?" "You're a monster. I'm a realist. Darius built his power on violence and fear. I'm just using his own tools against him." Cale's grip tightened slightly. "Last chance. Come with me. Help me end his reign peacefully, or watch this place burn with everyone you've come to care about inside it." The bond was screaming. Darius was close now, seconds away, and Lydia could feel his absolute certainty that he would tear Cale apart for touching her. She made a choice. "Fine, I'll come. Just let them go, please." Cale's expression softened. Smart girl. He released her throat, and Lydia sagged against the wall, gasping. Cale grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the shattered door. They made it 2 steps before a massive black wolf exploded through the doorway. Darius hit Cale like a freight train, driving him away from Lydia and into the far wall hard enough to crack stone. They rolled, snarling and snapping, a blur of fur and teeth and violence. Lydia scrambled backward, her throat burning where Cale had gripped it. Through the bond, she felt Darius's fury, white-hot and all-consuming. He wasn't fighting to subdue. He was fighting to kill. Cale shifted mid-fight, his wolf form erupting in a cascade of amber light. He was huge, nearly as large as Darius, with fur the color of burnt gold and eyes that burned with their own inner fire.
The two alpha wolves circled each other in the confined space, hackles raised, death in their eyes.
Then they collided again. The fight was brutal, vicious. They tore at each other with single-minded determination, neither giving ground. Blood splattered across the walls, the floor, Lydia's dress. She couldn't tell whose it was. Darius got his jaws around Kael's shoulder, bearing down with crushing force. Kael howled, rage and pain mixed and twisted, his claws raking across Darius's ribs deep enough to leave furrows. They broke apart, both bleeding, both panting.
Enough! Garrett's voice cut through the violence. He stood in the doorway with 6 other guards, all armed with weapons that gleamed silver in the torchlight. Step away from each other, now. Kael shifted back to human, unconcerned with his nakedness or the blood streaming from his shoulder. You really want to do this, Garrett? Start a war over one human?
She's not just one human. She's our lady, and you just committed an act of war by breaking into the safe room. Garrett's weapon didn't waver. Lord Vorn, step back. Let us handle this. Darius shifted too, and Lydia's breath caught. He was covered in wounds, deep cuts across his chest and arms, one eye swelling shut, blood dripping from a gash in his side. But his expression was murder. He touched her. Darius's voice was barely human. He put his hands on her, threatened her. I'm going to rip his fucking throat out. Not tonight, you're not. Garrett gestured to his men. Secure the prisoner. Lord Vorn, you need medical attention. I need to finish this. You need to not die from blood loss. Garrett moved between Darius and Kael. My lord, please, let us do our jobs. Darius looked like he wanted to argue. Then his eyes found Lydia, still pressed against the wall, shaking. Something in his expression cracked. Did he hurt you? Lydia's hand went to her throat. I'm okay. Let me see. He crossed to her and Lydia saw the guards tense, ready to intervene if he lost control again. But Darius's touch was gentle as he tilted her chin up, examining the bruises already forming on her neck. I'm going to kill him. The words were a promise, not a threat. Later, when you're not bleeding out. Lydia touched his face, feeling blood slick under her fingers. Please, let them help you. Through the bond, she felt his internal war, the need for vengeance battling with the need to make sure she was safe. Finally, he nodded. Take him to the cells, double guards, silver restraints, and if he so much as breathes wrong. Darius turned back to Kael, who was being hauled to his feet by 4 guards. You understand that every second you spend in my territory is borrowed time, don't you? Kael smiled, blood on his teeth. We'll see who's borrowing what when this is over. They dragged him away. Darius sagged against Lydia, his weight suddenly too much for her to support. Garrett caught him before he fell. Medical wing, now. Garrett looked at Lydia. You too, ma'am. Get that throat checked. I'm fine. You're in shock. Come on. The next hour was chaos. The medical wing was overwhelmed with wounded from the attack. Wolves with slash wounds, broken bones, worse. The pack doctor, a severe woman named Dr. Reeves, worked with brutal efficiency, barking orders at her assistants. She examined Lydia first, prodding the bruises on her throat with clinical detachment. You'll live. Ice it. Keep pressure off the windpipe for a few days. Then she moved to Darius. You, on the other hand, are an idiot. That wound in your side needs stitches, maybe 20 of them. Do it. Darius sat on the examination table, jaw clenched. Dr. Reeves worked in silence, her needle moving with practiced precision. Darius didn't flinch, but Lydia felt every stab through the bond. She sat beside him, holding his hand, trying not to think about how close they'd come to losing everything. Final count, Garrett said, entering with a tablet. 4 dead on our side, 7 wounded. We killed 11 of Kael's forces, captured 6 including him. The rest retreated. Casualties? Darius's voice was tight. Williams, Chen, and 2 civilians. Servants who got caught in the crossfire. Lydia felt bile rise in her throat. People were dead. Because of her. Because she'd been stupid enough to trust Kael. It's not your fault. Darius's hand squeezed hers. How can you say that? I gave him the opening he needed. He would have attacked anyway. Tonight, next week, next month. This was always coming. Darius winced as Dr. Reeves pulled another stitch tight. The only reason we're not all dead is because you screamed, warned me where you were. If you hadn't...
His jaw clenched. I might not have gotten to you in time. He said he'd kill everyone if I didn't go with him. He was lying. Kyle doesn't make ultimatums he can't enforce. By the time he reached you, half his forces were already dead or retreating. He had nothing to bargain with except fear. Garrett cleared his throat. The prisoners are asking to see you. They want to negotiate terms. There are no terms. Darius's voice went cold. Kyle broke sacred law by attacking during a festival. The penalty is death. My lord, if you execute him, his followers will never stop. This becomes a blood feud that lasts generations. Good. Let them come. I'll kill every last one. Darius, Lydia turned to face him. If you kill him, you prove everything he said about you, that you're a tyrant who rules through fear and violence. I don't care what he said about me, but I do. And so should you. Lydia held his gaze. If you want to prove you're different, that your way of ruling is better than his vision of democracy, you can't just execute him. You have to be better. Better gets people killed. So does being a monster. Lydia's voice softened. I know you're angry. I know you want blood, but there has to be another way. Dr. Reeves finished the last stitch and stepped back. You're done. Try not to get stabbed for at least a week.
Darius stood slowly, testing his injuries. Then he looked at Garrett. Bring the prisoners to the hall, all of them, and send word to every pack that attended the festival. Tell them to gather at dawn. They're going to witness justice. What kind of justice? Lydia asked. The kind that ends this permanently. Tfu. Dawn came gray and cold. Lydia stood beside Darius on the raised platform at one end of the great hall, watching as wolves filed in. The visiting alphas and their delegations, Vorn pack members, and in chains at the center of the room, Kyle and his 6 surviving fighters. Kyle looked rough. Someone had given him clothes, but his shoulder was wrapped in bandages that were already seeping blood. His amber eyes found Lydia, and he smiled like they were sharing a private joke. She looked away. Darius stepped forward, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. Last night, Kale Draven violated sacred law. He attacked during a festival, a time of peace and gathering. He killed 4 of my people, wounded 7 others, and attempted to kidnap my wife. By pack law, the penalty for these crimes is death. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, some uncertain. Kale laughed. Death? That's your answer to everything, isn't it? Someone disagrees with you, someone challenges your authority, and you just kill them. How very alpha of you. You murdered innocent people. I fought for a cause, for freedom from tyrants like you. Kale's chains rattled as he gestured around the room. All of you, look at him, wounded, furious, one bad day away from becoming the monster he pretends he isn't. Is this really who you want leading the Northern Territories? You broke sacred law, someone shouted from the crowd. I broke an unjust law, one created by alphas to protect their own power. Kale's voice rose. When does it end? When do we stop accepting that might makes right? When do we demand leaders who serve us instead of themselves? You're a murderer and a traitor, Darius said flatly, and your death will send a message that no one challenges my authority and lives. Then do it. Kyle spread his arms wide. Kill me. Prove you're exactly the tyrant I said you were. Give my followers all the ammunition they need to burn your territory to the ground. Darius's hand moved to the knife at his belt. Lydia grabbed his wrist. Wait. Lydia, just wait, please. She stepped forward, addressing the crowd. I'm human. Most of you see me as weak, irrelevant, a political tool Darius used to legitimize a treaty. And you're not wrong. That's exactly what I am. She felt Darius tense beside her through the bond, but she kept going. Last night, Kale Draven told me I deserved freedom. That Darius was controlling me, using me. And part of me wanted to believe him because it's easier to blame someone else for the cage you're in. Lydia looked at Kyle. But you're not offering freedom. You're offering a different kind of control. One where I become your symbol instead of his. Your proof that Darius is weak. Your weapon. That's not... Yes, it is. Lydia's voice cut across his denial. You don't care about me any more than you care about pack reform. You care about power. About tearing down what Darius built so you can build something else in its place. And maybe your vision is better. Maybe it's worse. But it's still built on blood and manipulation and lies. She turned to Darius. But you're not innocent either. You bonded me without fully explaining what it meant. You've controlled my movements, my choices, everything. You've been so focused on protecting me that you forgot to ask if that's what I wanted." Darius's expression was unreadable. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you both used me, hurt me, treated me like I was something to be won or lost instead of a person with her own agency." Lydia looked between them. "So here's what's going to happen. Cale Draven, you're guilty of murder and violating sacred law. But instead of executing you, Darius is going to offer you a choice." "What choice?" Cale's eyes narrowed. Lydia looked at Darius. "Trial by combat. You and him. Right here. Right now. Whoever wins decides the future of the Northern Territories. If you win, Kyle and his followers are exiled permanently. If Kyle wins..." She swallowed hard. "If Kyle wins, he takes your territory, your title, everything." The hall erupted in shouts. Darius stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "You want me to risk everything on a fight? I want you to prove you're strong enough to lead without executing everyone who challenges you. And I want Kyle to put his life where his mouth is. If he really believes his way is better, let him fight for it. Winner takes all." "This is insane," Garrett muttered. Kale was grinning. "I accept." "Of course you do. You've got nothing to lose." Darius turned to Lydia. "And if I lose? If he kills me? What happens to you?" "I make my own choices. For the first time in my life." Lydia met his eyes. "That's the deal. You fight. You win or lose on your own merit, not because you executed your enemy, and I get to decide my own fate regardless of the outcome." Through the bond, Lydia felt Darius's fear. Not of Kyle, of losing her, of the possibility that if he survived this fight, she might choose to leave anyway. "Do we have a deal?" she asked. Darius looked at the assembled crowd. At Kyle, chains still binding him, already anticipating freedom. At Lydia, standing her ground despite the weight of 200 werewolf stares. "Fine. Trial by combat. At noon. In the arena outside." He gestured to the guards. "Release him. Give him medical attention. Let him prepare." Kale's chains fell away. He rubbed his wrists, still smiling. "This should be interesting." "It'll be your death," Darius said quietly. "I promise you that. We'll see." The crowd dispersed, wolves arguing and taking bets on the outcome. Lydia stood on the platform, suddenly exhausted, and felt Darius's presence behind her. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing you've ever done." "Probably both." Lydia turned to face him. "I'm sorry. For doubting you. For giving Kyle the opening he needed. You were trying to understand your options. I can't fault you for that." Darius touched her face gently. "But Lydia, if I lose, if he kills me, you need to run. Get as far from here as possible. Because Kyle will come for you, and without me, there's no one who can stop him. You're not going to lose." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Lydia placed her hand over his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady. "Because you have something to fight for, something worth surviving for. And that makes you stronger than someone fighting for pride." "And what am I fighting for?" Lydia smiled, sad and tired and honest. "The chance that I might choose to stay, even when I'm finally free to leave." Through the bond, she felt his hope, fragile and desperate and absolutely terrified. "I'll win," he said. "I swear to you, I'll win." "I know." The arena was a circular stone courtyard behind the main building, designed specifically for combat. Packed earth floor, high walls. Benches carved into the stone for observers. By noon, every available space was filled. Lydia sat in the Alpha's box beside Helena, who'd emerged from her rooms for the first time in years. The older woman's face was drawn, but determined. "He's going to be reckless," Helena said quietly. "Darius always is when he's fighting for something he loves." "He doesn't love me." "Child, I can see the bond from here. It's practically glowing." Helena squeezed Lydia's hand. "He loves you, whether he's admitted it to himself or not." Below, Darius entered the arena from one side. He'd stripped down to just pants, his torso wrapped in fresh bandages over the stitches from last night. Every movement was controlled, but Lydia could feel his pain through the bond. Kale entered from the opposite side, similarly dressed, his shoulder bandaged, but he moved easily, like the wounds didn't touch him. An elder wolf Lydia didn't recognize stood in the center, raising his hands for silence. This combat is witnessed by the assembled packs of the Northern Territories. The rules are simple. Fight until one combatant yields or dies. The victor claims all disputed territory and authority. Combatants, are you ready? Ready, Darius said. Let's get this over with, Kael agreed. Then begin. The elder retreated. For a heartbeat, Darius and Kael circled each other in human form, assessing. Then Kael shifted. His transformation was fluid, practiced, his amber wolf erupting into being with barely a ripple. He was magnificent, power and grace combined. Darius shifted a second later, his black wolf larger but moving stiffly from his injuries. They crashed together in the center of the arena. The fight was different from last night, more calculated. Both wolves testing each other, looking for openings, neither willing to commit fully yet. Kael went for Darius's injured side. Darius twisted away, using his superior weight to shoulder-check Kael into the arena wall. The impact shook dust loose from the stones. They separated, circling again. Through the bond, Lydia felt Darius's pain, every movement pulling at stitches, every breath agony, but also his determination, his absolute refusal to lose. Kael lunged again, faster this time. His jaws snapped closed inches from Darius's throat. Darius retaliated with a vicious rake of his claws, catching Kael across the face and leaving bloody furrows. Back and forth they went, trading blows, both bleeding, both slowing. The crowd was silent, watching two alphas fight for supremacy. Kael got inside Darius's guard, his teeth sinking into Darius's shoulder, the same one Marcus had wounded weeks ago. Darius howled, the sound carrying agony and rage in equal measure. Lydia felt it through the bond, felt his strength wavering, felt him starting to lose. "Get up," she whispered, then louder, "Get up!" Darius's silver eyes found her across the arena. Through the bond, she poured everything she had into him, every ounce of stubborn determination, every bit of fire that had kept her alive through an arranged marriage and political manipulation and an exile alpha trying to use her as a weapon. She felt the moment it reached him, felt his second wind kick in. Darius twisted with a snarl, breaking Kael's grip and driving him backward. Then he shifted, mid-fight, risky as hell, back to human form. Kael shifted too, confused by the tactic change. They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, both covered in blood and wounds. "This isn't about territory," Darius said, his voice carrying across the silent arena. "It's not about authority or pack law or any of that bullshit. It's about her." Kael wiped blood from his mouth. "Everything's about her. You just took too long to realize it? I know, I'm an idiot, controlling, paranoid. Everything you said I was." Darius's hands clenched into fists. "But I'm trying to be better. Trying to give her the choice I should have given her from the start. And you?" His voice went cold. "You're just trying to take that choice away again. Make her a symbol instead of a person." "I'm offering her freedom. You're offering her a different cage." Darius moved closer, and Lydia saw the violence coiling in his frame. "And I'm done pretending there's any nobility in what you want. You want power. You want to hurt me. And you're willing to destroy an innocent woman to get both." "She's not innocent. None of us are." "No. But she deserves better than being caught between two bastards fighting over who owns her." Darius shifted again, his black wolf exploding forward with renewed fury. This time, when they collided, there was no testing, no calculation, just raw, brutal violence. Darius drove Kael into the ground, his jaws closing around Kael's throat. Not hard enough to kill. Yet. But the threat was clear. Kael struggled, his back legs kicking, trying to throw Darius off. But Darius's weight was too much, his grip too strong. The crowd held its breath. Through the bond, Lydia felt Darius's internal war. The animal side demanding he finish this, end the threat permanently. But the human side, the part that wanted to be worthy of Lydia's choice, hesitating. "Yield," Darius growled, the word distorted through his wolf throat. Kael went still. Then, slowly, he shifted back to human beneath Darius's jaws. "I yield." The words came out choked but clear. Darius released him and stepped back, shifting to human as well. Blood dripped from a dozen wounds, but he was standing, victorious. The crowd erupted. The elder wolf stepped forward. "The combat is decided. Lord Darius Vorn retains his territory and authority. Kael Draven and his followers are hereby exiled from the Northern Territories. Permanent ban. Cross the border and face execution. Guards moved in, hauling Kael to his feet. He looked at Darius with something between respect and hatred. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Darius's voice was absolute. You lost. Accept it. I lost the fight. But the war? Kael's eyes found Lydia. The war is just beginning, because she's never going to forgive you for what you are, what you've done to her, and when she leaves, and she will leave, you'll have nothing. He was dragged away before Darius could respond. Lydia stood moving down to the arena floor on shaking legs. Darius turned to face her, and she saw the fear in his eyes. The certainty that Kael was right. She crossed the blood-stained earth and stopped in front of him. You won. Yes. So according to our deal, I get to choose, stay or leave. No bond compelling me, no threats, no manipulation. Lydia took a breath. Just my choice. I know. Darius's voice was barely a whisper. And whatever you choose, I'll honor it, even if it kills me. Through the bond, Lydia felt his absolute sincerity, his desperate hope warring with his certainty that she'd choose freedom. She looked at the man standing in front of her, bloodied, exhausted, terrified of losing something he'd only just realized he wanted. And she made her choice. I need time to figure out who I am without someone else defining me, to understand what I want instead of just reacting to what I'm told I should want. Lydia touched his face, feeling blood and sweat in the stubble he hadn't had time to shave. But I'm not leaving. Not yet. Not until I know if what I feel for you is real or just the bond making me think it is. Darius closed his eyes, relief flooding through him so strongly Lydia felt it like a physical wave. Take all the time you need. And you'll really let me choose? Even if I choose to go? I swear it. On my life, on my territory, on everything I am. He opened his eyes. You're free, Lydia. Finally. Actually free. And if you choose to stay anyway, his voice cracked, that's the only victory that matters. Lydia stood on her toes and kissed him. Gentle. Brief. A promise and a question in equal measure. When she pulled back, Darius was staring at her like she'd given him the world. Don't make me regret this, she whispered. I won't. I swear I won't. Behind them, the crowd was still cheering. Helena was crying. Garrett was placing winning bets. And somewhere beyond the Northern Territories, Kael Draven was... The healers worked on Darius for 3 hours. Lydia sat outside the medical wing, her dress still stained with his blood, and felt every stitch through the bond, every pull of thread through torn flesh, every wave of pain he tried to suppress so she wouldn't feel it. It didn't work. Helena found her there as afternoon light faded to evening, sliding down the wall to sit beside her. He'll survive. He always does. He shouldn't have had to fight at all. Lydia's voice was hollow. If I hadn't been so stupid, if I hadn't trusted Kael, then Kael would have found another opening, another weakness to exploit. Helena took Lydia's hand. You can't blame yourself for being human in a world designed to eat humans alive. I should have been smarter. You should have been given a choice from the beginning. But Darius is like his father. He thinks protecting people means controlling them. It takes time to unlearn that. Helena's grip tightened. Are you really staying? I don't know. Maybe. I told him I needed time to figure out what's real and what's the bond. And what do you think is real? Lydia was quiet for a long moment. I think I'm angry at him. For bonding me without fully explaining it. For treating me like something fragile instead of trusting me to handle the truth. But I also think, she swallowed hard, I think I'm starting to understand why he did it, and that scares me more than anything. Why? Because if I forgive him, if I accept that fear made him desperate, and desperate made him cruel, then I have to accept that I might do the same thing in his position, that there's no clean line between protecting someone and controlling them. And I don't want to live in a world that gray. Helena smiled sadly. Welcome to being an adult. Everything's gray. The trick is figuring out which shade you can live with. Dr. Reeves emerged from the medical wing, wiping blood off her hands. He's asking for you. Lydia stood on shaking legs and entered. Darius lay on the examination table, his torso wrapped in fresh bandages, an IV in his arm pumping fluids and probably painkillers. His eyes tracked her movement across the room.
"You look terrible," Lydia said. "You should see the other guy." I did. They dragged him out in chains. Lydia pulled a chair close to the table. "How do you feel?"
Like I got in a fight with another alpha and barely won. Darius tried to sit up, winced, and settled back down. But alive. Thanks to you. I didn't do anything. You gave me a reason to keep fighting when every nerve in my body was screaming to quit. His hand found hers, careful of the IV line. The bond goes both ways, remember? I felt what you sent me, that fire, that refusal to give up. It's what saved me. Or almost got you killed by making you reckless.
Probably both. Darius's thumb traced circles on her palm. "Lydia, about what I said in the arena. About being controlling and paranoid. I meant it. I've spent so long thinking protection equals control that I forgot you might want something different. I do want something different. I want to be treated like a partner instead of a possession.
I know. And I'm going to try. Really try. But I need you to understand." He paused, searching for words. "The bond makes it worse. I can feel when you're afraid, when you're in danger, and every instinct I have says fix it, control it, eliminate the threat. Overriding that? It's like trying to stop my heart from beating. Then we figure out how to make it work, together, with actual communication instead of you making decisions and expecting me to accept them."
Lydia leaned forward. "And you have to promise me something. Anything. If I choose to leave, if I wake up one day and decide I can't do this anymore, you let me go. No manipulation, no using the bond to track me down. You just let me go." Through the bond, Lydia felt his agony at the thought, but his voice was steady. "I promise." "Good." She kissed his forehead, gentle. "Now rest. You look like death warmed over. Stay. I'm not going anywhere." She meant for a few hours. She ended up staying through the night, dozing in the chair beside his bed, jerking awake every time his pain spiked through the bond. By morning, rumors had spread through every packed territory in the north. Darius Vorn had defeated Kael Draven in single combat. The Exile Alpha was banished permanently, and the human wife, the one everyone had dismissed as political window dressing, had somehow been at the center of all of it. The visiting Alphas came to pay their respects before departing, each one eyeing Lydia with new wariness. She was no longer irrelevant. She was the woman the Alpha King had nearly died to keep. That made her dangerous. 3 days after the combat, when Darius was finally cleared to leave the medical wing, Garrett brought news. Kael and his followers crossed the eastern border this morning. They're gone. Good. Darius was moving stiffly, his wounds still healing despite accelerated werewolf metabolism. Double the border patrols anyway. I don't trust him to stay gone. Already done, my lord. Garrett hesitated. There's something else. Reports from the southern territories. Apparently word of the combat has spread. Some packs are saying you showed weakness by not executing Kael outright. Let them say it. I'm tired of proving strength through body count. Garrett looked genuinely surprised. My lord, I won the fight. I exiled my enemy, and I kept my promise to my wife that there would be justice without unnecessary bloodshed. Darius's hand found the small of Lydia's back. That's enough. Anyone who thinks otherwise can challenge me directly. After Garrett left, Lydia turned to Darius. Who are you, and what have you done with my husband? He's trying to be better. Emphasis on trying. Darius's expression turned serious. I need to show you something. Come with me? He led her through the estate to a wing she'd never entered before. The West Wing, the one he'd explicitly forbidden her to access weeks ago. I thought this was off limits. It was, for reasons that seemed important at the time but probably weren't. Darius opened a heavy wooden door. After you. The room beyond took Lydia's breath away. It was a library, smaller than the main one but infinitely more personal. Books lined every wall, but mixed in were artifacts. Maps marked with notes in what looked like Darius's handwriting. Weapons hung in careful displays, and covering one entire wall, photographs. Hundreds of them. Lydia moved closer, studying the images. Darius as a child, maybe 7 or 8, standing beside a man who must have been his father. Darius as a teenager, all awkward angles and too serious expression.
Darius with people who were clearly pack members, celebrating something, laughing. This is your life. Part of it. The part I wanted to keep private. Darius moved to stand beside her. I closed this wing off because it's where I come when being the Alpha King gets too heavy. When I need to remember I'm also just a man who misses his father and worries he's making all the wrong choices. Why are you showing me this now? Because you asked for honesty. For real partnership. And that starts with letting you see the parts of me I usually hide. He gestured around the room. This is me, Lydia, not the Alpha, not the King, just Darius, flawed, scared, doing his best and failing more than he succeeds. Lydia touched one of the photographs. Young Darius with his mother, both smiling at something off camera. You looked happy. I was. Before my father died. Before I had to become someone I wasn't ready to be. Darius's voice went rough. I was 19 when I killed the Alpha who murdered him. 19 and absolutely certain I was doing the right thing. The heroic thing. It took me years to realize I was just a traumatized kid who chose violence because it was easier than grief. Is that why you're so controlling? Because you're still that kid trying to prevent the next disaster? Probably. Helena says I have what she calls catastrophic thinking. If I can control enough variables, manage enough threats, then maybe no one I care about will die. He laughed, bitter. Turns out that's impossible. People die anyway. And the ones who survive resent being treated like problems to solve. Lydia turned to face him fully. I don't resent you. I resent the situation, the lack of choice. But you? She touched his face. You're just a man trying his best. That's all anyone can do. Even when my best involves bonding you without full consent? Even then, though we're going to have a long conversation about boundaries and decision-making authority in this relationship. I'd expect nothing less. They spent the afternoon in that library, Darius showing Lydia pieces of his history, explaining scars, sharing stories, building the foundation of something that might actually resemble a partnership. As evening fell, Lydia found herself studying a map of the Northern Territories, all the different packlands marked in various colors. It's a lot to manage. It is, especially alone. Darius moved to stand behind her. I've been thinking about what Kael said, about representation, about giving pack members more of a voice. You're considering his reforms? Some of them. Not the full democracy he wanted, that's chaos waiting to happen. But maybe councils, representatives from each pack who can bring concerns directly to me. Make sure I'm not making decisions in a vacuum. Lydia leaned back against him, careful of his healing wounds. That's growth. That's desperation. I almost lost everything because I was too stubborn to listen. I can't afford to make that mistake again. They stood there as darkness gathered outside, two people trying to build something real from the wreckage of political necessity. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Darius implemented his council plan, bringing in representatives from major packs to advise on territory disputes and resource allocation. Some alphas grumbled about the change, but most seemed cautiously optimistic. Lydia spent her days learning, not just werewolf politics, but pack law, history, the intricate web of alliances that kept their world from tearing itself apart. Helena was her primary teacher, but Darius contributed too, explaining nuances his mother sometimes glossed over. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the bond between them shifted. It was still there. Lydia could still feel Darius across the estate, still knew when he was stressed or hurting or pleased. But it felt less like an invasion and more like a connection, something she could lean into instead of fighting. One evening, 2 months after the combat, Lydia found Darius in his study staring at a letter with undisguised fury. What's wrong? He handed her the paper. It was from Kael, short and venomous. Enjoy your victory while it lasts. The world is changing, and your old ways won't survive it. When you fall, and you will fall, I'll be there to pick up the pieces, including her. Lydia crumpled the letter. He's trying to get in your head. He's succeeding. No, he's not. She moved around the desk to stand in front of him. Because you're not the same person you were 2 months ago. You've changed, grown. And that terrifies him because it means his narrative about you being an unchangeable tyrant is wrong. You think I've changed that much? I think you're trying, every day. That's what matters. Darius pulled her into his lap, careful and gentle. I don't deserve you. Probably not. but you're stuck with me anyway. Lydia rested her head against his shoulder. For now, at least. For now is enough. They sat there in comfortable silence until Garrett knocked, with news of a border dispute that needed Darius's attention. Lydia watched him shift into alpha mode, shoulders straightening, expression hardening, and felt a surge of affection through the bond. He was trying. For her. For his pack. For the possibility of being something better than what he'd been raised to be. That night, alone in her room, she'd kept her own space despite the bond needing somewhere that was just hers. Lydia made a decision. She was staying. Not because of the bond, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she wanted to see where this could lead, wanted to be part of building something new from the ashes of what had almost destroyed them both. The next morning, she found Darius in the training yard working through combat forms, his movements still slightly stiff from healing wounds. "I have something to tell you." He stopped mid-strike, turning to face her. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. Or maybe it is. I haven't decided." Lydia took a breath. "I'm staying, not temporarily, not until I figure things out. I'm staying because I want to, because despite everything, the bond, the politics, the near-death experiences, I want to be here. With you." Darius went very still. "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be about anything in this insane world." She crossed to him. "I'm not saying it'll be easy. We're going to fight. I'm going to push back when you try to control me. You're going to struggle with letting me make my own choices. But I want to try, really try, to make this work." Through the bond, Lydia felt his emotions crash over him like a wave. Relief, joy, fear that this was a dream he'd wake from. Love, deep and terrified and absolutely certain. "I love you." The words came out rough, like they'd been torn from somewhere deep inside. "I didn't want to, tried not to. But I do. Completely. Terrifyingly. And if you ever change your mind, if you ever want to leave, it's going to destroy me. But I'll let you go anyway because you deserve that choice." Lydia felt tears on her cheeks. "I love you too," which is probably the stupidest thing I've ever admitted, but it's true. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of promises neither of them was sure they could keep. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Darius rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to screw this up sometimes. Definitely. And it's going to be messy and complicated. Absolutely. But we'll figure it out together." "Together," Lydia agreed. Garrett found them an hour later, still wrapped around each other in the training yard, and loudly announced that if they were going to be disgusting, he was taking the rest of the day off. They laughed, and it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. The months that followed were exactly as messy as predicted. Darius struggled with giving Lydia real authority, constantly second-guessing her decisions before catching himself and apologizing. Lydia pushed boundaries, testing how much autonomy she actually had, sometimes pushing too far just to see if he'd stop her. They fought, sometimes viciously, the bond carrying emotions too raw to hide. But they also learned how to communicate without the fight-or-flight responses, how to disagree without it becoming a referendum on their entire relationship, how to be partners when every instinct they'd both been raised with said relationships were about power, not equality. The Pack Council became a real force for change, representatives bringing concerns directly to Darius and getting actual responses instead of platitudes. Some old guard alphas hated it, but younger wolves embraced the shift, and Lydia found her role, not as decoration, not as political symbol, but as someone who could see problems from outside the werewolf mindset, offering solutions Darius and his advisors would never have considered. She became invaluable, not because she was bonded to the Alpha King, but because she was smart and stubborn and absolutely unwilling to let tradition stand in the way of better ideas. 6 months after the combat, news came from the Eastern Territories. Kyle had established his own council, was implementing democratic reforms in the packs that had followed him into exile, and according to reports, was actually succeeding. Darius read the intelligence briefing with complicated emotions playing across his face. He's doing what he said he would, actually building something new. "Does that bother you?" Lydia asked. "It should. He's my enemy, but mostly I'm just—" Darius shook his head. "Relieved? If he's focused on building his own territory, maybe he'll leave mine alone." Or maybe he's gathering strength for another attack. Maybe. But I'll deal with that if it happens. Right now, I'm going to focus on making sure my territory is strong enough that he won't want to try. It was growth. Real, genuine growth. And Lydia felt fierce pride through the bond. That evening, they hosted a dinner for the Pack Council, something that had become a monthly tradition. 20 wolves from different territories, all bringing their concerns and ideas. Lydia sat beside Darius at the head of the table, fielding questions about resource distribution and trade agreements, and felt something settle inside her. This was her place, not because she'd been sold into it or forced into it, but because she'd chosen it. Every day, she chose it. And that made all the difference. After the dinner, as they walked through the gardens under a sky full of stars, Darius took her hand. "I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple silver band with a single dark stone that seemed to hold its own light. "It's not a wedding ring. We already did that disaster of a ceremony." Darius took the ring out, holding it up to catch the moonlight. "It's a choice ring, because every day you choose to stay, choose to try, choose me. And I want you to have something that represents that, your choice, your power." Lydia felt her throat tighten. "Darius, if you hate it, I can get something else. Or nothing. It's just, I wanted you to have something that was about you, not about pack law or political alliances or—" She kissed him, cutting off the nervous rambling. When she pulled back, she held out her left hand. "Put it on." He did, his hand shaking slightly. The ring fit perfectly, the stone catching light like captured starfire. "I love you," Lydia said quietly. "Not because of the bond, not because I don't have other options, but because you're you, flawed and trying and absolutely impossible sometimes. But mine." "Yours," Darius agreed, "for as long as you'll have me." "That might be a very long time. Werewolf aging is slow, right? Helena said bonded humans sometimes live longer than normal. Sometimes. If the bond is strong enough." He pulled her close. "Does that scare you? The possibility of centuries instead of decades?" "A little, but mostly—" Lydia looked up at the stars. "Mostly, I'm curious to see what we build. What this world becomes when old bastards like you finally accept that change isn't the enemy. This old bastard is learning, slowly, painfully, but learning." They stood in the garden, two people from completely different worlds, bound together by magic and choice, in equal measure. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was real. And that was enough. Years later, when historians wrote about the transformation of the Northern Territories, they would mark the Spring Festival combat as the turning point. The moment when the old Alpha system began its slow evolution into something new. But for Lydia and Darius, standing in their garden under stars that had watched countless similar moments throughout history, the turning point had come much earlier. It had come the moment Lydia chose to stay. Not because she had to, not because she was trapped, but because freedom meant nothing if you never used it to choose something worth fighting for. And Darius Vorn, for all his flaws, for all the ways he'd failed her and would fail her again, was worth fighting for, just as she was worth changing for. They went inside as the first frost of winter touched the garden, their hands linked, the bond between them humming with contentment. In the east, Kyle Draven was building his democracy, brick by careful brick. In the north, Darius Vorn was learning that strength came in many forms, and sometimes the strongest thing you could do was admit you'd been wrong. And in the space between, Lydia Hale, now truly Lydia Vorn, was proving that being human in a world of monsters didn't make you weak. It made you the most dangerous thing of all, a choice freely made, a future freely chosen, a love that survived because it was built on truth instead of necessity. Helena died peacefully in her sleep 3 winters later, content in the knowledge that her son had finally found something worth living for beyond duty and territory. Garrett eventually found his own mate, a fierce beta from the Western packs who gave him as much hell as he gave everyone else. And the Northern Territories slowly, painfully, transformed into something no one had imagined possible, a place where alphas ruled but didn't dictate, where pack members had voices, where humans and werewolves found ways to coexist that didn't involve one side conquering the other. It wasn't perfect. Wars still threatened, disputes still flared, But the foundation was different, stronger, built on the radical idea that maybe, just maybe, working together was better than fighting for dominance. On their 5th anniversary, Lydia stood in the arena where Darius had nearly died and thought about how far they'd come. Darius found her there, moving up behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. Feeling nostalgic? Feeling grateful that you didn't die, that I didn't run, that we both chose the harder path instead of the easier one. No regrets? Lydia turned in his arms, touching the scar on his side where Kael's teeth had torn deepest. 1,000 regrets. 1,000 moments I wish had gone differently. But this? She gestured to the arena, to Vorn Hall beyond, to the life they'd built from ashes and blood and stubborn determination. This I wouldn't change for anything, even knowing what it cost. Especially knowing what it cost. Easy victories don't teach you anything. We learned. God, did we learn? Darius kissed the top of her head. We're still learning. We'll always be learning. That's what partnership means. They stood there as afternoon light stretched their shadows long across the stones where Darius had fought for her, where she'd chosen him, where everything had changed. And in that moment, both of them understood the truth that would carry them through whatever came next. Love wasn't a feeling. It was a choice, made every day, in 1,000 small ways and a few large ones. Choosing to stay when leaving would be easier, choosing to fight when surrender would be simpler, choosing to trust when fear screamed betrayal. They'd both made that choice. They'd keep making it, for as long as they both drew breath. And that, Lydia realized, was the only happily ever after that mattered. Not perfection, not the absence of struggle, just two people choosing each other, every single day. Through the disasters and the victories and all the messy, complicated moments in between. The Alpha King and his human queen. The tyrant who learned to listen and the prisoner who learned to stay. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And in the end, that made all the difference.